Thank you. This time we'll go ahead and adjourn our closed session and reconvene an open session. There are no items to report out from closed session. We do have one board member participating remotely.
Yes, so at this time, I would like to ask Vice President Hoxie to respond to the following questions. Are you able to hear our proceedings on this end?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of the agenda for this meeting?
Yes.
Has the agenda been posted at your location?
Yes.
Is your location such that any member of the public could participate in the public portions of the teleconference meeting from your location?
Yes.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask President Weiner and our board members Shogun, Phillips, and Collins-Coleman, are you able to hear Vice President Hoxie?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We all can. Thank you. And because we are having this meeting via teleconference, all actions will be by roll call vote.
Great. Thank you. All right. At this time, we will do our Pledge of Allegiance. Can I have our students that are here help lead us in that? All right, ready?
Abby's gonna lead us.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Wow. Ready?
Wonderful.
Right there. So, face the flag.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. And we're going to begin our evening tonight with a presentation from Delray Elementary School.
We need to report out the closed.
What's that?
We need to report out.
I did.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
How many things happened there?
I know it's a lot of people. We're not sure where to face, but we'll. That way.
Oh.
We don't do this way. We're gonna face this way.
Let's just face it anyway.
We're gonna face all the adults. Thank you for having
It's a
us
sphere.
tonight. This is very much a sphere. We are excited to be here. We love our school, so it makes coming here and telling you about all the awesome things that happen at Delray really, really easy to do. So from the really small things that we know happen on the daily, every day at Delray, to the kind of larger, more special events like Family Math Night. We're excited to share with you. I have with me 4 of our student leaders from Family Math Night. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting with Abby.
Hello, I'm Abby, and I'm in 4th grade, and my teacher is Miss Sarnes. Hello, my name is Jamin. I'm in 4th grade, and my teacher is Miss Basham. Hi, my name is Drew. I'm in 5th grade, and my teacher is Mr. Conway. Hi, my name is Harrison. I'm in 5th grade, and my teacher is Mr. Conway.
Oh. Thank you, guys. Sorry. Difficulties here. We're trying to figure out where is a good way for us to be on camera. Harrison, will you scoot maybe a little bit towards Ms. Shogun? And I think we'll just shift this way. All right. I think, are we okay? All right. Family Math Night is a great tradition that started here a couple of years ago. We are excited to bring it back this year. We ended our school year last year with Family and Math Night, and to kind of look at our calendar and spread things out so that not a lot of things happen towards the end of the year, we decided to move Family Math Night to the beginning of the year, which was a great decision, but yet also a lot of work for the start of the year. Abby's going to kick us off with sharing a little bit about our outcomes or our goals that we had for the night.
So Family Math Night was really fun, but some of our outcomes were to engage with math, learn, play, and problem solve as a family, and to have fun at all times. Now, Harrison is going to tell you about the layout of the night.
So throughout the NPR, we had 8 stations. Each station had 3 leveled activities.
It's me. Yeah.
Beginning, intermediate, and advanced. Some additional activities that we had were the estimation station, the what do you notice posters, and the sign-in graph.
And largely this event couldn't have happened without our student leaders. Like I said, we turned this event around really quickly at the start of the year. It happened towards the end of September. student council members were getting nominated and kind of getting situated with their very new roles. But we also invited some of our student council members that helped out in the spring family math night to also be our fifth grade student leaders, so that we had a really nice, healthy group of students, one, organizing the event, learning all the games, going to each of the classrooms before the night to kind of hype up the event and share about what students and families can expect when they come to family math night. And then on the day of, they had a lot of work prepping, but most importantly, facilitating each of their stations. I also want to give a shout out to our teacher advisors, Mr. Conway, Ms. Starnes, and Ms. Fasha, who really were instrumental in helping organize our students and getting them ready for the night. Oh, underneath too was something that Harrison mentioned. That was our sign-in graph for the night. When you came in, you would write your name on a Post-it, and then you would put it next to the grade level that you were at. So at the end of the night, we had a nice visual graph of who attended.
So next we're going to talk about stations. The station I facilitated was called 3D Shapes. It was to help learn about feelings of shapes and how 3D shapes are different from 2D shapes. So the beginner activity was where you picked the foam shape, felt inside a bag with a bunch of mini plastic shapes, and tried to feel the same foam shape that you picked. The intermediate was the most played. It was where you had a cutout of a 3D shape, and you had to cut it out, fold it, and tape it, and then you get your own 3D shape that you get to take home. The advanced is similar. You answer a small sheet about faces on 3D shapes, pick a foam 3D shape, draw the cutout thingy, and then you cut it out and fold it, like the intermediate, and you get to take it home. My station was called Nimble Numbers. When I first got there, I started setting up the supplies like where they were supposed to be. Then when people start coming, I taught them how to play the game. And also I started answering questions if any person had questions. My station was to teach kids how to multiply, divide, subtract, and add. Advanced was most played because it seemed like everyone wanted a challenge.
My station was dominoes, and in the beginners area, they had a little piece of paper with a black line through the middle, and they put stickers to represent a domino. In the advanced area, in the intermediate area, they'd answer a little sheet with math problems, and then they'd make a domino of their own again. And then in the advanced area, they'd learn how to play a game with dominoes and add together all the scores to get the answer of who won. The main goal of my station was for students to learn more about adding numbers and to get a sense with dominoes.
My station was growing equations, where you would choose a number and write 4 to 6 equations on how to get to that number. The point of this station was to learn how to use multiple expressions. So among some of the many activities we had, some of them were the what do you notice and what do you wonder posters. They were all set up at a table, and you wrote down on the Post-it what you noticed or what you wondered. Some of them had right answers, like the middle one, how many right angles do you see? That one has a correct answer. But like the one with the watermelons on the right side, that is no right answer. You just have to pick one of the following watermelons and tell why it's different or like similar, or like what the differences are to the other watermelons. And now Jamin's going to tell us about one of the most popular activities, estimation jars.
The estimation jars are filled with different items in different size jars. Each jar has a different number of items.
Now, would you guys like to try it out?
Yes.
How many erasers do we think are in this jar? Abby, you come on.
Slow down a little bit.
No way. More.
The Director of Business Services says 99.
112.
112. I'm here, don't give away.
Say 107. Oh, I was gonna say
All right.
150.
All right.
163,
I'm gonna say 230.
230.
175.
I don't try to do math in my head quickly. I'll say like
Other guesses?
90.
23.
193,
123.
123. We do have some that's pretty darn close,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah.
Who was that?
I know it was from your faces.
The correct answer was 232.
Get a bar chart, right?
Not a Powerball.
Asking her to walk slower really helps.
Yeah.
You gotta count the bottom up. We did.
This
I'll try to
was
count
definitely one of our more popular stations of the night, and we had different items and different jars, like Jamin said. I think we have one last slide.
We did?
One more slide.
Sorry, I was super excited about that.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our presentation. Do you have any questions?
Wow.
Oh, we will.
We explained everything. There's no
Do you want
questions.
to share your motivations too?
What?
Harrison was hoping, some reason why we wanted to talk about math night tonight was that we're hoping to get some more games so that we can keep doing math night and not repeat some of the games. And wanted to share
Good
how
ask for money.
important this night is for our community and also our students. Did you want to add on here, Harrison? I did. We were not sure how to. I stole your fire. I'm sorry. Are there any questions for us?
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Shogun.
First of all, I just love how student-led this is, and that you guys did put this on as students. That's really awesome. So since you did a lot of the planning and the organizing and then got to see it come together, what was your favorite part of that process?
It was
Well, you mean
probably,
the math night process? Or
Yeah, like in planning it and putting it on, what did you enjoy the most?
Just probably like just doing it, like.
yeah, I
it's
kind of
fun to,
enjoyed
like,
interacting with younger kids.
Like you
teaching
got
them
to
how
like teach, like the younger kids need a lot of help. Usually the advanced and intermediate could just like read the sheet. But it was really fun to just like help kids learn more about math and see them so engaged and like happy doing it. Yeah.
Thanks.
I liked how you could interact with most of the things, well, all of the things, and that you could like have a really good time with your friends and family there and learn a lot.
I guess my question follows up on what Ms. Lai just said. What are some other games or other activities that you would like to see at future math nights?
I think I like to see like a maybe like a I don't know.
Maybe some like extra additional activity, like instead of 2, maybe there could be 3. I don't know what it is exactly yet, but I think maybe we could add on another one.
So for some just kind of context and historical background,
Maybe like a little like beach ball that you throw around and whatever
Definitely.
2 numbers your fingers land on, you multiply them.
we can add some more interactive
Great.
Yeah,
stations.
let's do it.
But we ordered kits, so we've ordered kits over the past couple of years that come with the games. But what we were noticing is that some of the, because they've been used a lot and loved a lot.
oh yeah,
we
my
definitely
station
need
was
some
like,
replacement activities.
Got it,
Yes,
okay.
And more interactive.
I have a mathematical question. What percentage of the students, I think you do percentages in 5th grade?
we do.
Uh-huh. What percentage of the students came to math night?
Maybe like 75%.
Ooh, that's,
Yeah, it was probably more 80.
Go with that. We'll go with that.
80%.
80%.
It was definitely a very full room, lots of families that are here tonight as well came and attended. So I mean, 75 to 80% is what it felt like.
It felt like a high percentage enjoyed the evening from
Yes.
Delray. Yeah.
Everyone was so crowded. It was very crowded, absolutely.
It was.
I barely had
Waiting
space at my
as
own
we
station.
open the
Yeah,
doors.
same.
I have one more question. In addition to the, different games, what would you do differently? And, what maybe stuck out the most that you're like, next year we're gonna do this instead?
Maybe we could help the younger students a bit more, because usually the intermediate or advanced, there is some kind of explanatory sheet or something that I'm sure they'd understand. But the beginners, there's usually no explanation, and even if there was, I'm sure they probably wouldn't understand.
That's a great idea.
Very good.
Anything else you think we could do better for next time?
Well, coming back to something we said before, the stations were already well used. We had to find spare pieces at our station.
I think probably more sheets of paper and more student helpers because there were a lot of kids at stations and we could use more people to help.
Maybe
some
we can use
stations
some
could have,
OIS
3.
sixth graders
There you go.
next year.
Oh, that'd be good.
I'll come back. Love it. Well, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Clearly you're great mathematicians, but
Also wonderful public speakers. So
Yes,
thank you so
yeah.
much for being
Thank you
here.
for being
Yes.
here.
We can go out that door.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good with that.
Okay, I was just giving them a minute to exit.
that's a great way to start a
That's the
meeting.
best way to start a meeting is to get our students in here. Okay, moving into our public comment period. At a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees, the public may comment on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the governing board. For items on the agenda, the public may comment at the time the board considers the agenda item. For items not on the agenda, the public may comment under item 6A, public comment. The Board of Trustees requests that individuals who would like to address the Board of Trustees on an item do so by filling out a request to address the OUSD school board card and turning it into the superintendent prior to the agenda item. Cards are available at the meeting. Individuals who would like to address the Board of Trustees by webcast are asked to complete the online public comment request form found at a link on our agenda. Members of the public will be enabled to speak their comment. Comments for an agenda item will be accepted until the start of the agenda item. Comments are limited to not more than 3 minutes. Groups are asked to limit their comments to a total of 5 minutes. The board shall limit the total time of public comment to 20 minutes. To comply with the Brown Act, the board may listen to comments from the speakers but can neither discuss nor take action on the issues presented. And it looks like we have one public comment under 6A here. Mr. Danziger?
Hello, everybody, President Wiener and members of the board and staff that's here. Steve Danziger, I'm a board member of Friends of the Nature Area. I just wanted to give you a quick update. So yesterday, for the first time since the area was closed last March, 10 volunteers went to the nature area between the hours of 9 and 1. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Stuart, for getting us in there. A lot of work was done. We started cleaning the area. Dr. Baines and Dr. Barrett was there, as well as tourists and myself, with students from different high schools, mostly high school students. Because there's a lot of work to be done, but we made a good dent in it. The vendor that you selected to clean the garden area did an amazing job, as well as the volunteers that came in there on September 30th. It was really well done. It wasn't anything big. It was just kind of a lot of maintenance to do, cleaning off the roofs and our raised bed boxes. The students cleared those out, and we just did a lot of raking and cleaning and We started at one part of the garden, and next Sunday we'll start kind of at the greenhouse and above. But I want to thank you for your continued support, and hopefully, I know our president will be talking to you about getting in there beyond next Sunday. And finally, I just wanted to invite any board members or any staff members who want to come down there and see what's going on. We'll be there next Sunday, 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and you can sign in and come on down, help, or just see what we're doing. And Dr. Baines said she'd be happy to show you around and talk about her vision for the area. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Are there any public comments submitted through the online?
There is no public comment.
Okay, moving into our first action item A, approval of ratified collective bargaining agreement for 2022-23 between the California School Employees Association, Local 320, and OUSD.
All right, as indicated on September.
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Yes.
Ms. Weiner, before Brian starts, I'd like to accuse myself of this item, and I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll continue. On September 20th, 2023, CSEA Orinda Chapter 320 ratified the school year 22-23 collective bargaining agreement between the district and CSEA. Some noted changes were in the reclassified article, which was new in this collective bargaining agreement, as well as military leave provisions and salary benefit changes. We're happy that we're finished with this, and we're looking forward to the current year.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the board? Any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Okay, this item is on for action. Is there a motion to approve?
This is Katie. I make a motion that we approve the ratified collective bargaining agreement for the 2022-2023 year.
This is Eve, I seconded.
Okay, trustee Collins-Coleman.
Aye.
President Weiner,
Aye.
trustee Shogan,
Aye.
trustee Phillips,
Aye.
and Ms. Hoxsey recused herself. So motion carries.
Thank you. And moving into our action item B, California School Employees Association, Chapter 320, initial proposal on collective bargaining topics for 2023-24 public hearing. So we'll go ahead and open this public hearing.
All right, yeah, thank you. Pursuant to Government Code 3547, initial collective bargaining proposals of a school district and the union must be sunshined or shared with the public prior to the commencement of negotiations. For the 23-24 school year, our current school year, the CSA bargaining team has determined that the following articles and topics are proposed for negotiations. Article 5, which is grievance procedures, Article 8, leaves, Article 9, did I get that right? Okay. Article 9, pay and allowances. And then in addition, we will discuss editing, modifying job descriptions or job titles as well.
Okay, are there any public comments? We'll do that first since this is a public hearing.
There's no public comment.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. Any questions or comments from members of the board?
If anyone not here.
Okay.
Did you?
Yeah, do we?
Sure.
David from speaking later. Hello. Not on, but I'm loud enough.
Yep.
Hi, Matt Miller, CSEA president, technical administrator, Mr. Stephanie, as you all know. First, wanted to just speak really briefly about last year's negotiations. A good process, a learning process. Something that came to light there was definitely the need for better communication, which I'm pleased to say the district and the union have already engaged in a couple of worthwhile conversations before sunshining, and I plan on continuing this success moving forward. The one thing I do want to say about this year, because obviously we can't at this time talk about what we're negotiating, I just wanted to state publicly my support for our esteemed colleagues and our friends over at OEA, and that we stand with them for their endeavor to hire and retain the best possible staff we can here at OUSD. And every member of CSEA stands with them on that. And I am excited to work with the district on achieving that goal for everyone.
Great.
Thank you. All right, are there any questions, comments following that? No? Okay, thank you. This item is on for action. Is there a motion?
This is Etta. I move that we approve the CSEA collective bargaining proposal for 23-24.
This is Katie, I second.
Okay, is Cara voting on this one?
Yes. Cara, you're voting on this one?
I want to stay.
Recuse or abstain?
I think I should abstain because my son is a CSDA employee, right?
Perfect, thank you. Trustee Shogun?
I think, I'm sorry. I think, Cara, it would be a recusal versus abstention, right?
Okay.
Yep, just want to make sure. Yep,
I'm not part of it.
correct. So recusal.
Trustee Shogun?
Aye.
Trustee Phillips?
Aye.
Trustee Collins Coleman?
Aye.
President Weiner?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. All right, moving into action item C, agreement with fixed assets physical inventory.
Okay, sorry, just managing multiple technology items here. Mrs. Arbelbide is going to be Mika. You're presenting this information item, or action item.
Thank you. This is for physical fixed asset inventory. We have been working with associated variation for a number of years. And the last time the physical actual counting of inventory was done back in 2016. And we are bringing them back to reset, make sure everything is accounted for. And we will be able to report to the auditor and the public the correct number.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any questions or comments by members of the board?
This seems necessary to do, and seems necessary to outsource to get an accurate inventory and then keep track of it going forward.
Yeah, we're hoping that we can keep track of it ourselves.
Right.
But for the,
It's been a long time.
it's been a long time. Yes.
Actually, it's a very big job and it's important.
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing this to us.
And I was trying to follow, like, for example, like with the laptops where it sounds like we don't need to do all the tablets, but we do need to do all the laptops. Like, is there, I assume there's some inventory of like the laptops, for example.
500 is a threshold.
Okay. And so, and do we have some, like, do we have some kind of inventory system for the laptops now, or I assume so? Okay. And then we can just use that to file.
We manage all Apple devices via mobile device management app called Mobile, and we have manage all Chromebooks through Google Admin.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that could just feed right into this.
Right, so we'll be able to feed into it as opposed to, yeah.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this?
There's no public comment.
Right, this item is on for action. Is there a motion?
This is Katie. I make a motion that we approve the fixed assets physical inventory contract with Associated Valuation Services.
This is Etta, I second.
Okay. Trustee Collins Coleman?
Aye.
Vice President Hoxie?
Aye.
President Weiner?
Aye.
Ms. Shogun?
Aye.
And Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. And moving into our last action item, which is Resolution 24-12, Bullying Prevention Awareness Month.
Yeah, so October is a bullying prevention awareness month, and it's a National Bullying Prevention Awareness Month. And we support the right of all the students and staff to attend the schools in a safe and free from bullying, harassment, and discrimination environment. So we are bringing this resolution to the board as an acknowledgement of this month. We'll actually have a presentation and the discussion items around this, so I won't talk about it too much. But the board has a resolution in front of you to hopefully, that we are recommending and you hopefully pass. So we will leave our comments maybe for the presentation unless you have questions about this. But
I think we're going to go ahead and read this.
and we do have it projected if we would like to include Ms. Hoxie on this as well.
Okay, so I will start. Whereas bullying is unwanted aggressive behavior among students that includes but is not limited to physical, verbal, sexual, or emotional harm or intimidation intentionally directed at a person or group of people. And why don't we go ahead and
Sure.
Okay. Whereas bullying includes but is not limited to exclusion, put down, name calling, aggressive physical contact, unwanted joking, comment, or laugh, destruction of property, enlisting someone to assault another person with a bully and abuse of power, and
Whereas Orinda Union School District supports the right of students and staff to attend schools that are safe and free from bullying, harassment, discrimination, and violence. And
Whereas providing a safe school environment that ensures both the physical and emotional safety of students and staff creates the conditions necessary to foster academic achievement. And
Whereas bullying, harassment, discrimination, and violence, and even the fear of harm can create barriers to learning and contribute to low self-esteem, depression, anger, and in extreme cases, school violence or suicide. And
whereas a safe school is one where teaching and learning are not distracted, disruptions are minimized, drug violence, bullying, and fear are not present, students are not discriminated against, expectations for behavior are clearly communicated, and consequences for infractions are consistently and fairly applied. And
whereas the month of October is National Bullying Prevention Month, which is a campaign in response to the need to raise awareness of bullying and provide schools and communities with an opportunity to educate students, parents, and others about the role in bullying prevention.
now, therefore, it is resolved that the Orinda Union School District Board of Trustees hereby supports the goals of National Bullying Prevention Month and will work with parents, students, teachers, and staff to develop, implement, and monitor policies and programs that foster and support a positive school climate free from bullying, harassment, discrimination, and violence throughout the year.
thank you. And thank you for bringing this. I know that we're going to talk more about in our next agenda item. So I don't feel a need to just like comment on this other, just thanking you for bringing this resolution. I don't know if other board members have anything they want to address on this resolution in particular, but thank you for the resolution.
yeah, agree.
Are there any public comments?
There's no public comment.
Okay. This resolution is on for action. Is there a motion?
This is Katie. I make a motion that we approve Resolution 2412, Bullying Prevention Awareness Month.
This is Etta, I second.
Trustee Phillips,
aye.
Vice President Hoxie,
Aye.
President Weiner,
Aye.
Trustee Shogun,
Aye.
Trustee Collins-Coleman.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving into discussion item A, update on bullying prevention strategies.
So I'll just kick us off, but then really Carrie will take us through the start. So thank you. I think we haven't done an update on bullying prevention strategies in a long time, at least since I've been here. So excited to be here. So Carrie and I will take this together. So we're here, as I mentioned, just in the last agenda item, to give you a board a little bit of an update on what we are as a staff doing around bullying prevention strategies. I will say that next you will have principals in front of you talking about single plans for student achievement and around the climate as well. They will be presenting very specific strategies around safe climate. So you'll hear a little bit about that there as well, kind of very specific from them. So we didn't want to bring them here twice, but they'll talk about that under those single plans as well. So tonight we just kind of wanted to give you a little bit more of a bigger picture from a district perspective. So in our kind of overview of a presentation, Carrie will take us a little bit around what is bullying, effects of the bullying, and then I'll jump into a little bit of a data and the support system and then ongoing challenges. So Carrie, your mic.
Well, first of all, I do also want to thank you for passing the resolution. And if you could just attend to the first slide that gives, oh, no, you were on it.
Oh, I'm sorry, this one, yeah.
Attend to this slide.
We're attending to it.
It has the definition of bullying on it. Couple of things to notice are real or perceived power. That's something to be mindful of because the person may not have actual power, but if it's perceived power to the person that's being bullied, it can have the same effect as if they had real power. The other thing I'd like to draw your attention to is that one of the things we're very mindful of with bullying is that we have to take care of the student who's being bullied and we have to take care of the student doing the bullying because the effects are disastrous for both. That there can be serious lasting consequences for students who on either side And so we want to make sure we're taking care of both sets of students. We also know that sometimes when investigating these situations, this is when we find out that some So there's 3 main types of bullying, and I will tell you that the next slide will also address the one we hear about the most. Verbal bullying, social, which is also that psychological. Student may try and get other students to do something to a student, like leave them out of games or, talk about them. And then, of course, physical bullying, where students are having physical contact. And then the next type of bullying that can also encompass all 3 of these is cyberbullying. And cyberbullying, of course, is getting a tremendous amount of attention. And the interesting piece about cyberbullying is that it can be, you can have verbal, you can have the psychological, social bullying over cyber, but also the physical because of the gestures, because pictures can be sent. One of the most insidious things about the cyberbullying is that it can happen 24/7. It can happen to a student when they're home, when they're alone. It can happen in the community. And once it happens, it is very difficult to retract. It can go out to a very wide group audience, and many times it's anonymous. Next slide, please. So bullying can be discriminatory if it's happening and falls under one of the protected classes. And one of the things that I just like to highlight, we have our list there, but students with disabilities and students in the LGBTQIA+ category are some of the most vulnerable populations. Anyone can be a victim of bullying, but those populations in particular are much more vulnerable. Next slide, please. Now the effects of bullying. The next couple slides, we're going to talk about what can happen to a student who is bullied, what can happen to the witnessing, those who are bystanders, and what can happen to the bully. So for a student that is bullied, we know that they can experience low self-esteem and isolation. They may perform poorly. It definitely can affect their school performance, but also somatization. They can start having physical manifestations of the stress and the fear or anxiety that they might be feeling due to the bullying, and mental health issues, anxiety, depression, and even suicidal thoughts or ideation. For students who witness bullying, they are more likely to use alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. They also are more vulnerable to mental health problems, and they may also miss school. And some of this has to do with, they may be witnessing it and feel trapped and not know what to do. And so that feeling of, another piece is they may be worried they'll be next, right? So there can be a lot of fear with students who are witnessing the bullying happening. And then students who bully are also more likely to have abused substances, to have academic problems, and to experience violence in adolescence and adulthood in higher rates. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Aida to talk about where we are currently and what we're doing and current challenges.
So we'll bring it down from sort of why we're talking about bullying and the importance of it to what's happening in Orinda and what we're seeing. And prior to that, students are reporting increased incidents of all types of bullying, and especially when Carrie mentioned cyberbullying is on the rise with an increased use of just access to technology and increase ways of accessing of technology. This is not just an Orinda trend. This is a trend in other districts across the state, across the country, and we hear about it, we talk about it in different districts. So I just, not that we want to be the trend followers, I'm just saying that it is a trend that is seen in other districts. How do we collect the data? We do collect the California Healthy Kids Survey, which can done every other year. We have been administering annually for the last few years. And that's a big piece of our data. It is a very normed assessment. It's very valid and credible. So we want to make sure that we continue using it. And we did last year implement WeTip anonymous reporting system. And in the WeTip, if you have never kind of played with it a little bit, you can actually select, am I putting in bullying, you can actually select as bullying, and there's little definitions in there. Is it or is it not? So we can, use a little dashboard and distinguish how much of it is being, how much bullying is being reported. I will say that we have a little ways to go with the WeTip dashboard. It is newly implemented last year. It is much more so used this year than it was last year, which we can use, we can start, once we get a little more into the school year, we can start actually separating the data, looking at it. It's mainly used at OIS, I think, because students have access to technology and they can put it in there themselves. Even though we do have some reports coming in from elementary schools, which we believe are mainly done by the parents. And that's what we've said, have the parents type it in. So we have this year really, Carrie and I worked with counselors and our administrative staff to really document all of this in our student information system. We started using Aries last year as our SIS, or student information system. Is a robust way of documenting, and then the ability to query that information by different fields. So we can really have a rich way of bringing it down and separating it by different demographics. So we're encouraged with how we'll be able to, pull that information in. We don't have that data to present to you just because it's new this year, but we will have that.
May I add one thing about the WeTip?
Sure.
Something that is very encouraging to me is that some students are actually reporting about something that they witnessed, not something that happened to them.
Yes.
So it does
Yes.
give students an avenue to be an ally.
Yes.
For something that they may have seen.
Or kind of to your comment of sort of, that it's really shocking actually to see the effects of people that witness bullying, what those physical effects on them are, to that comment of how trapped they feel and don't know what to do with this information. This does give them an avenue to do so. So they can actually report something and feel like they're doing something without, that stress of, gosh, what will happen to me if I'm being, telling on my friends. So we are actually seeing a lot more reporting, and which is also a testament that we're sending out that information. So we'll just keep kind of once in a while reminding students and parents, hey, this is out there. And I think we've talked about this in different venues, but we are looking to actually expand the district-wide use of pulse surveys, which are the quick kind of quarterly, pulse surveys. And we just talked about this in our mental health steering committee as well, of how we can actually start implementing this quickly and methodically so that we can gather more information and data that we can respond to right away, as opposed to Healthy Kids surveys. Really valuable, good information, but it's so summative and we can respond to it in a quick way. So I just wanted to kind of give you where we are, but the data that we have is the Healthy Kids survey data. You've seen it all, but I wanted to pull just a few aspects that are very related to this topic. So on this graph, it's about feeling safe on our campuses and evaluating anti-bullying climate. So just note that the blue graph in 2021 is the students were administered this doing distance and hybrid learning. So they were actually mainly at home. So it's not quite comparable data. And the last two, the red and the yellow bar lines, are comparable. They were both surveys were administered in first week of November, or within first couple of weeks of November in 21-22, 22-23, and we're about to launch it again. So we'll have another third year to add to it of kind of comparable data. So It's not quite a 3-year trend, but it sort of is. So we can see that distance learning plus 2 years of post-distance learning data. So what we would like to see on this slide and the next slide, which has the 7th graders, is we would like to actually see that yellow graph go up, right? We'd like to see those numbers go up, meaning that the environment they're feeling is safer. And unfortunately, Healthy Kids Survey last year just was, in all accounts, pretty much not data that was encouraging, right? So we see the anti-bullying climate being perceived as fewer percentage of students perceiving it as less anti-bullying climate, and fewer, less percentage of students perceiving it safer at school or on the way and from school in 5th grade. And then similar data, actually a little bit of a more dramatic jump, but similar data and kind of trending down in 7th grade. I will say, when we talk about what programs and this is in no way am I defending the data, but I'm just saying we didn't implement the anti-bullying module yet or the character ed until later. So this is in November data. So we're hoping some of it will, really last year's programming should reflect in this November's data, but we'll see, right? So how that works. But with that said, it's just nobody wants to see 3 years in a row of it going down. Now, on this side, when we look at the Healthy Kids Survey here, we actually wanted to go down this time. This percentages, we want this yellow bar graph to be going down because this is actually percentage of students reporting some sort of bullying type activity. So just so you know, all questions here are asked about experiences that are happening at school, except for the cyberbullying. The cyberbullying is referring to questions happening off campus, and it's all questions the students are asked within the last 12 months. So, and then they're giving a description of what cyberbullying is before they answer the questions. They're also given multiple questions so that the analysts of the survey can actually collate those. So been hit or pushed, the numbers go up. And this actually matches our anecdotal information of what we were hearing from campuses. So we're very discouraged by the data, but we weren't surprised because we were hearing it from our principals as well. Mean rumors spread about you going up significantly, called bad names or target of mean jokes, and then the cyberbullying also increasing.
Can I ask I hadn't even noticed this when we looked at this last time, but so clearly there are kids who are saying they've either been, hit or pushed or had mean rumors spread about them or called bad names. And yet at the same time, they're still actually saying, but there's an anti-bullying climate. So, right. And that they feel safe at school, actually, for the most part.
Actually,
so how do we kind of balance those two things? Or are the kids not realizing that when that happens to them, I just want to make sure they feel like their experiences matter when they're answering these broader questions, or any other way that you might interpret?
Or how are they, when they call it the safety, it's such a huge thing, right? Safety has to do with weapons on campus, all sorts of things, not just necessarily bullying, right? But then when you really start targeting into well, have you been pushed? Yeah, but I still feel safe. Yeah. When I'm at recess, I get pushed and hit. So I don't know if they're correlating those two as the same. It's kind of how I would read it.
I think that's why those pulse surveys will be helpful.
Right,
You can really
right,
target it
right.
like that.
Yeah. 7th grade as well. Kind of very similar, except for the been in a physical fight is the only metric that went down slightly. But and these make sense that you haven't been in a physical fight on campus from distance learning to being in person, but going from 21, 22 to 22, 23, all of those numbers also going in a wrong direction. So what are we doing about it? We do have actually quite a bit of programming at school sites. So very specifically last year, all elementary schools, we revived the Second Step character education program. I think in prior years, we sort of lost a little bit of, there was, Kid Power and Second Step. There we had parent facilitators facilitating character education lessons. Then some schools were putting it a little more on the teachers. So this was sort of a revision and recommitment to second step character education to be taught in every single grade level with fidelity. Our principals, have dashboards. They can see how much time is spent in the classroom. Not that, so that we can see it. There's a lot of think sheets, reflections, and it is actually done in every single grade level, especially at the elementary schools. So there was, it's being led and taught by our teachers or led by our teachers, as opposed to, nothing against our parents, but it is, done by educators, and it's done by consistently across the district in every single grade, as opposed to, using volunteers and you just don't know what's going to happen in every single classroom. We also added an extra module to Second Step, which was very specific, a month-long or 4-week-long anti-bullying module. And that was added last year to really address this. It was taught after the survey, as I mentioned. So we are very curious to see what the effects are, if there are any, hopefully. But there's very specific around bullying prevention. So it is age appropriate, and how do you deal with bullying in every single classroom. In middle school, our counselors take a much more of a primary role in designing of the curriculum and teaching it and pushing it out during the academy classes. And then this year we did add, and Kevin was just actually presenting that at the coordinating council as well, is doing a lot more cyber safety. So also going back to putting in, we have common sense education, which those resources existed before, but also making sure that they're pushed out with fidelity to an added 2 second step character ed, sort of like, hey, here's your character ed, here's the anti-bullying module, and we have this piece as well, because that cyber safety, like as a first grader, how do you keep yourself safe? And then what happens in 5th grade? One of the things that was called out by the parents and coordinating council is when that gets pushed out in school, can we communicate with the parents around, hey parents, we taught your kiddos this in school. Can you reinforce it? Also, do you know about these tools? So that's getting pushed out this year as well, with really heavy focus on kind of cyber safety.
And the new, sorry to interrupt.
No,
the
please.
New program parent ed portal.
Yes. Oh, Parent Venture.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Parent Venture, yeah, and I didn't actually mention that because parents should have talked about parent in here a little bit. There's quite a bit of a focus around cyber safety and online safety. That's become, thank you to Angel for her. We should be sending out these to our parents weekly. But there's actually quite good resources on there around, and if you can't attend live, to go back and visit.
I've used the website. It's pretty
really
fascinating what they
great.
have. Yeah.
A lot of great resources on there. So I think our parents are starting to spread. We actually can't see how many are attending things, unfortunately. So we need to contact them and see like how many Orindans have signed up, but it's starting to spread, and we're starting to hear more about like, hey, these are really good resources. Yes. But there's a lot of big focus on mental health and online safety, which goes along this kind of, especially with the cyber bullying. Yeah. The big piece around prevention and support is kind of how do we build community? We really try to roll this out, and this is a big, wheelhouse of Carrie's, especially around building community circles. So we try to roll it out pretty heavily last year around building community circles, and really reinforce it again this year, so that every classroom becomes a community. Because when you're a community and you feel connected to your classroom, it's a lot harder to bully somebody. That's why cyberbullying is such an easier avenue to do so, because it's secret, right? You can just push things out. You don't see them in person. When you're a part of that community member, it's really hard to do that, which we want to make it hard, right? We don't want it to make it easy. So we pushed out community circles, led a lot of professional development actually through community circles. So there's a lot of classrooms that utilize it, start their day with that, or also when something happens, that they use them to process trauma or process information on how we talk to each other and what we do.
Could I piggyback on that? In addition to it's harder to bully, it's harder to be a silent bystander. When you really have strong classroom communities, and you know that someone is doing something, it's a lot harder to be quiet about it if you know about it. And so it's kind of it works in two ways. And then the third way it works is that the kids are in community.
Right.
And that fostering that safe, supportive classroom environment that they are doing for each other, in addition to the teacher who's leading the class. It all works together.
I mean, I really felt that even one of the classrooms that we went into in Delray, one of the fifth grade class, we'd split up for our site visit, but they were working through a particular assignment, but they were in a circle, and you could tell that the students felt very supported and being able to share. And I think it kind of relates to that.
I think this year, in addition to that, was a big refocus on norms and structures. Positive behavior is a big part of how to support anti-bullying or bullying prevention. So there was also what are the school norms? What are the classroom norms? So that was a big focus as well. Starting off with professional development in August, where there was a very big focus on positive behavior, bringing in a behaviorist and talking. There was a big reinforcement of what happens in a classroom or on school norms when they keep them simple, reinforce, constantly bring back. It was sort of just these things that almost, I wouldn't say we forgot them, but first of all, a lot of our newer teachers need that reinforcement. And a lot of us that kind of, needed to remember some of those techniques, especially with bigger behaviors these days. Establishing school culture through student leadership. You saw some student leaders here today with math. I think in the past, the board has we've had visits from our actual student councils in here, expanding student leadership and having them take on through buddy systems. We heard that quite a bit today in a different site and you heard it today as well, as how important it is to them to work with younger students. So we really want to expand that a little more. Equity efforts are efforts of supporting students. As Carrie mentioned, our students with, disabilities or, LGBTQIA students are the most bullied students. This week is a diverse, DAW week. It is about awareness, acceptance, kindness. Those equity efforts are for these reasons, is so that everybody can feel. So when we talk about those equity efforts, it's for this reason. And then positive support for our staff, as we mentioned, professional development, and then Carrie implemented through her department, Ask a Behavior. So when we do have bigger kind of misnormed behaviors in our school, in our classrooms or in our schools, they can actually directly have access to our behaviors for some professional support on how do we treat with our students. And then we have individual and group support. Our counselors, it seems like there's no presentation that we don't want to talk about our wellness centers, maybe on the next one. Counselors in the wellness centers, they actually offer individual support for students who have gone through bullying or are doing, the act themselves and also need support. And then they also provide group support as well to our elementary students, and then counselor at OIS students offer that same support as well. Those counseling spaces have become, and wellness spaces have become those safe spaces for a lot of the students that don't feel as safe as we mentioned, in other like recess or lunch, kind of those unstructured areas. Staff and parents can refer students for counselors for support if they are struggling through because of bullying effects or having seen bullying or what they need to report.
If I may, the elementary wellness counselors, that's early intervention. That's that early intervention, one-to-one, small group intervention on how can we deal with these feelings a different way.
Yeah.
Whatever those feelings may be. So I just want to throw out, I know we talk frequently, but it really is a critical piece that we're providing to students because they need to learn, right? This isn't, sometimes we know we're going to teach math and we know we're going to teach reading and writing and we know we're going to teach social studies, but we think that students will just intrinsically know how to behave in this artificial environment that is school, and they don't always. And so having staff available that can provide these supports in real time has been really beneficial.
The last thing we'll say is we have a lot of ongoing challenges. I mean, clearly our current data demonstrates ongoing and growing challenges experienced in our district and other districts. So we plan on implementing, as we mentioned, the full surveys to help identify students in need, not only to examine the trends in a quick, formative way, but also provide that immediate intervention. There's absolutely, Etta, you mentioned parent education, but we need more parent education around what are the behaviors that we're seeing so that they can be aware. What are those peer interaction that we're seeing on our campuses? And then, again, we can't stop talking about our online and social media challenges. One of the challenges that we're in school that we're experiencing is that in-school behaviors are sometimes and often an extension of extracurricular behaviors. So there is a need and an opportunity for stronger partnership with outside organizations. This has been a conversation before with like Parks and Recs or Positive, Coaching Alliance. Could we partner? We have such strong extracurriculars, and especially in sports, but also other organizations. How could we possibly partner with them? Because oftentimes we see conflicts that are happening in the field that are carried into the schools, or the competitive edge on the field that's carried into the school. So it's just a very different. So how do we deal with that, right? So that there's an opportunity there. And the need to examine current programs. Are they actually successful? So I mentioned last year we implemented a lot of that, and the survey was taken right at the start of the implementation. So we don't know, right? So we'll have pool surveys. We'll have healthy kids surveys. We implement in November. We usually get data around January, February. So we'll know, we need to measurement of the success, right? We keep implementing the programs. We just don't know, right? So we really want to focus on evidence and are these things that we're implementing actually working? So that's our ongoing challenges sort of in the immediate. And now we're happy to answer questions.
All right, well, thank you. I mean, there's certainly a lot in here and there's a lot. I'm really hoping that next month when we do have those site reports that we get a little bit more information
Absolutely.
from the specific sites about what they're seeing and where they're seeing it. I've heard anecdotally or not even anecdotally, had people come to me and share, that it's happening more on the playground or on the bus or at lunch or brunch or wherever it is. So I'd love to get a little bit more information.
I will say, if I can add, yes, and mentioning about where we're collecting the data in a student information system, how we set it up, because it allows us actually, I'm looking at Angel because she's now our back to being data specialist and assistant. So we were able to set up areas so when you put in an incident like, hey, this occurred on our campus, we can actually designate a location. So we can say it's happening on a blacktop, it's happening in the classroom, it's happening here. So we'll be able to also pull that data. So yes, and when we collect data, we'll actually have also data at the end of the year where specifically on campuses are these locations happening. So is it the same across the district? Is it like different school sites have different places? So we can actually allocate resources towards appropriate intervention and supervision too.
Well, and the cyberbullying it's hard to track that because
That's
it's hard
like a
to
whole-
know,
yes.
If it's on Instagram or TikTok or Roblox
That
or
I
what,
can't,
it's,
right. That's conversations, yes.
that's conversations, but that's
Yes.
something, that we really should be figuring out if there is a way to track that.
Yeah.
Are the wellness counselors tracking that at all? When kids come in, if it's cyberbullying or if it's something
They're
else?
tracking what they're seeing them for, but it's not necessarily in that granular detail about like, hey, where did it occur? But our administrators will have that information for sure. Or at least, maybe not tallied, but they'll tell you. The incident I was talking to OIS it was about on the video games. So the kids don't have access to social media, but it's part of a Roblox video game. That's where the chatting was happening and that's where the bullying was happening.
Yes.
So they will be able to present that information. Yes.
Others have specific questions? I'm sure others have specific questions.
I do. Thanks for the presentation. I think it's full of information that we've heard a lot about already, and I appreciate that we're really acting on what the what's happening in the schools. I think the last bullet on the slide, that one, the need to examine current programs and successes, that was mine on your radar. But there seems to be so much that's being done to kind of get at or to improve or reduce bullying or instances of bullying on campus. And they're coming from all these different directions. Is there a way to use data to really target what is working? So is the curriculum really turning the needle, or is it the community circles that's turning the needle? Is that different by grade levels? Like a 5-year-old's going to respond differently to that climate than a middle schooler might. If I'm thinking of a lesson pushed out in academy to a 7th grader versus the sponge of a kindergartner who's just listening and in a circle, right? There's just differences there. And how do you get that? I think the pulse surveys could be
Good structure.
because you're going to get a student's perspective on what they think of whatever's being taught to them. So that was kind of top of mind. Like there is so
Many variables.
what's working, right? There's just a lot of variables, but what is it that's really working? And there's a lot of investment in curriculum, a lot of investment on parent ed and just climate. So that's one thing to just, I don't have an answer, just throwing it out there to think about how to narrow it down to what's really.
We can structure the questions too in a way.
Might give you some data on that. And then I think the other thing that I just wanted to mention, you mentioned norming across campuses, because I think responding to behavior consistently across schools is important because it sets just a general consistency, understanding this is the kind of community we want to have. This is how our schools are going to operate, and that there is some sense of consistency for different behaviors. And I know that there's been work around that, but just continually doing to the extent possible. I think that helps regulate students, right? If they know this is what happens when X or Y, when I do this, this is what I can expect. They're probably going to be less likely to engage in bullying, or maybe they feel comfortable speaking up about it or whatever. Those were my 2 main things that I made really long-winded. Thanks.
I think some of that is already happening.
We're working on the norming of the kind of what would be traditionally called the discipline matrix. So sort of a response to, and if this is happening, here's what will occur. Kind of the accountability matrix maybe is a better way of, for students' behaviors. So that's in the process of happening right now, and then issuing out publicly, really. Yeah.
And the great part about a behavior matrix is it also gives the student a target they can hit, right? It's clear, it's published, it's concise. This is the expectation of the behavior in the hall. This is the expectation of the behavior in the lunchroom. This is the expectation of
That target, not the misbehaving target.
Positive.
This much. But then also understanding what the consequence will be if you don't do that behavior, right? So, and just having that be a uniform, exactly like you said, having it uniform that, if this teacher sees someone running in the hall, they'll stop them. And so will that teacher, and so will that teacher, and so will that admin, and so will that aide, right? So that it's all hands on deck.
Which is super hard to achieve, but I think working towards that alignment goes a really long way. And something that this is just sort of like a thought, but I think it's worth saying because in our steering committee, it came up a little bit too, and you mentioned it in your slide, like this spillover from whatever might be happening at a practice or extracurricular thing, and then what that might mean in the classroom or translate to at the recess, whatever. And we live in a really competitive community. I don't think I don't think too many people would disagree with me on that. And kids are doing things outside that are really competitive, and they're known to be competitive. They're described as such. Maybe there needs to be some better communicating about, well, at lunch, kickball is fun. We're not like, this is rec, right? This is not club, whatever. This is rec. Everybody's going to participate. Just a distinction that there are times when it's competitive and there are times when it's not, and both have value, right? There's something missing there at the school.
So I was going to, just if I can pick up on what you're thinking, but there are certain behaviors you actually don't want in any of them. And I think that should also be clear. And I think one place where we could actually potentially kind of start that conversation, it's probably, generally known as like one of the less competitive in that way, but with like the OIS sports for the city, and maybe it's a topic for a future city school board meeting. Because I spent a lot of my Saturdays, this time of year, watching soccer games, and can say that there's definitely some aggressive behavior from very small children out there on the field, and most of them are probably OUSD students. And so, but I think, I actually think that Orinda Rec, group from the city would be very open to a discussion about, hey, can we set guidelines that get clearly communicated out to all the parents and particularly the parent coaches? And then, for soccer, for example, I don't think they have parents basically, ref the games, but like, here's what's allowed and here's what's not allowed.
Here's the sideline behavior.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was actually thinking more on the field behavior. There's the sideline stuff tends to be, both. But I mean, I think again, clear expectations and just having something written down. You're like, oh, okay, right. If somebody hits someone, then you should blow a whistle and stop the game and make sure everybody talks about it and then move on or whatever it's going to be. And, I think they would know what might feel appropriate, but it seems like it's at least worth the conversation to start that kind of thing. And if it goes well, then maybe extending that conversation to some of the other sports entities, which may or may not be as, interested in the discussion, but it's a place to start potentially.
It's almost like a community charter,
Yeah.
if you will, the behavioral matrix, but a community charter of, how to play the roles, or I don't know, something like that.
And just an acknowledgement that, when students are playing in their after school, that's a different realm than at school.
Right.
And so the goals may be different than they are at school, because at school, we want full inclusion. We want everybody playing and we want everybody having.
That was my point. Like, there is a place for your competitive
absolutely.
league that you're in.
Right.
School's not it, but in a positive way, right? This is for fun. This is, you can teach your friend how to play, or this is just because we're friends, right? Not a winner necessarily all the time.
I think if we have a better understanding of where and when the bullying is occurring, grade levels, we could come up with different types of programs, maybe peer programs where older kids are helping younger kids play nicely, and kickball on the playground or whatever, that, might help the kids understand that this is more for fun and not, the competitive soccer. So I think once we have more information about where and when these things are occurring, we have a better ability to come up with strategies to address them.
Well, I mean, I can tell you, it's definitely by far the most occurring on recess and lunch. It is absolutely, that is at the games. It's the peer interaction at the games. That's where it's getting reported. Does it carry then into the classroom as they go back? For sure. But that's where most of it is happening.
So then we need to think about what we could do
Right.
to address those unstructured time periods, because most kids aren't going to say they do something in front of an adult. They tend to do, they're going to bully someone out of sight, right?
Right. Yep.
So I'd love to see us come back with some strategies for different grade levels to have practical solutions for helping with those unstructured times.
We have talked about that a little bit also in the mental health steering committee as well. So I think we are working on those as well. I think there are some strategies around on campuses, sort of teaching, because I mean, that's one of the things kind of going to, I think the point, Carrie's point is, it's not like students, not everybody does it willingly. Like bullying, it's accidentally that's happening, and the kids are learning and pushing boundaries. They just don't know. They're learning what to do. So they actually have to be taught how to interact and how to peer interact. So, upperclassmen, as I'm going to call them, 4th and 5th graders, have to actually be taught first before they can kind of go down into lower grades. So there's a lot there. Because actually giving them just all sorts of recess equipment doesn't just do it, right? They just don't know actually. So we were talking a little bit about how to address that, because we do, there are successful programs out there, that require resources, but that's, you talk about how do we reallocate resources? So.
Right. Make that investment.
Yep.
Well, it's hard too, because even if you have playground monitors there, they're not necessarily going to observe.
Not that, right,
Yes.
right, always, yeah.
Yeah.
And we do want it to become intrinsic.
Right.
I mean, that is the goal. The goal is for people to be kind because that feels great.
Right.
And for them to be able to have language around the feelings they might be having that previously they may have turn to bullying somebody else because they weren't feeling good, but when they have the language to be able to express what's going on with them, then they have another avenue to channel those feelings.
Would be interesting if you can place in either a pulse survey or something about, a yes or no question, if they're able to be upstanders, you know.
They can speak up.
Yeah.
It's a lot
You know,
harder than,
right.
when we talk to our kids. Yeah.
You know what I mean? To just,
Well, and when it's not anonymous.
right.
Like in person.
Yes.
It's a whole different issue. That's hard to address.
Okay, any public comments on this?
Doesn't look like it.
No.
There's no public comment.
Okay, well, this was on for discussion. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for bringing
So
this.
I'm sure we'll be back.
Yes. Okay, moving into our next discussion item, 2023-2024 assessment report.
Yes, it's our 23-24 assessment report on 22-23 assessments. Angel was giggling because she's corrected my years. This is an annual report on really mainly our state assessment data. I will just say that this is publicly allowed to disclose, but it's actually, if you've noticed, there are no articles yet written out there around state assessments because it's district-wide sort of comparable data is still embargoed. Yes, we're allowed to do this. That's not an issue. And you'll notice a lot of the districts are doing it actually right now. And I think it's this week that it becomes unembargoed, meaning that the newspapers and journals are start picking it up and you'll start seeing a lot of kind of national states trends, county trends and so on, which we know from being able to peruse it, but don't know kind of statewide information. So what we'll cover in here just really quickly is kind of overview of state assessments, just as a reminder of what it is or what those include, and then really dive into some of our scores. And then briefly on kind of what does that impact mean on curriculum and instruction, and then final kind of any bigger observations and next steps. So just as a reminder of what CASP system includes, or California Assessment for Student Progress and Performance and Progress is really the smallest piece is the science or California Science Test, and that's the newest part of the assessment. We have English language or ELA and math assessment, which is part of the Smarter Balance assessments. And then for students that have been in the United States for less than a year, they're allowed to take the Spanish Reading Arts assessment instead of the English test. So those are the kind of pieces of the umbrella. You'll notice that in each one, kind of on the bottom of that umbrella piece, there's the California alternate assessment, as that's for our students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. They take CAW assessment, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. As a reminder of a timeline in the last few years, back in 2019, right before the pandemic, we had an administration of the CASP test, and then distance learning in that March of 2020 hit. Schools went into distance learning, and California actually canceled CASP. So for 2020, CASP did not occur. In 2021, in the spring, the districts were given a choice, either of administering CASP, the state assessment, or some sort of an alternative assessment the state district can select. Orinda at that time selected an alternative assessment. So you will notice that 2020-21 data is missing for that reason. And then we go back to 2022, where we administer spring assessment, in 2023. So that's why there's a gap in there. Okay, and then what are we reporting on? English language arts, all students in grades 3 through 8 take it for ELA and math. If you are up in high school and you're interested, it's really 11th grade only. So for ELA and math. So it's a much more significant actually in K-8s, right? Because it's every grade level. So you can really follow the cohorts in 11th grade. It's like summative of 3 grades. You really don't, like, what is this measuring, right? By junior year. The interim assessments, I'll just say I should have included that in here. Science test here is also taken in, what is it, 7th grade, 5th and 7th. But in high school, it's taken depending on which science you take when. So it could be 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. So it's also all over the place. Interim assessments are taken practice assessments, which Kevin and Geeti work really hard with the teachers to make sure that they take, because what we don't want is our students to be tested on how well they do technology. So we want to make sure they're comfortable with tech for Smarter Balance, and then the assessment really assesses their knowledge versus how well they can actually do tech. So we administered those throughout the year. They are valuable information because they can, you can take them on specific standards. So you can actually get immediate results if the teachers use them. Participation rate, there is a requirement from the state to have, actually this is a federal requirement of 95% participation rate. We are well above that and have not had issues of hitting 95%. I want to make sure I include this slide because when you start getting unembargoed data and you start playing with all sorts of and looking up other districts, you will notice sometimes like, holy cow, that district has really high scores. Always make sure to look at participation rate. There are times when you will see like 14% participation rate or 4% participation rate. That means that there's such a small sliver of students taking it. So really it's an important thing. This is a very valid, clearly these are like almost all of our students take it. So this is a pretty credible sample of students taking the assessments in Orinda.
I think it's important to communicate that out when the tests are
Absolutely.
being
Once we start, we can
administered
actually
again, because
release
I
them.
always hear people saying, does my kid really need to take this? Like, what does it mean?
I will say from a very small sample of 1 in my home, not a valid, statistically valid sample, are actually kids, and it's just a clear communication. The kids actually in elementary school care about how they do on these assessments. My sample of 1 was watching me make this presentation, was very curious about these, and actually made me look up her assessment scores, which I haven't looked at since last year, which is really bad because I didn't know how to log in. So I finally actually figured it out. And that was like an excitement of which color am I? So I actually think like it made me like really how important these are to our kids at a younger age. Not in high school, like, again, they care so much about other assessments, but elementary school kids do care, like, which color band am I in, and what does that mean for me? So I think, kind of in the spirit of we're sending our paper copies of our report cards home and are encouraging, our kids to talk through the goals and talk through, what is written in your report card with the parents. It is actually important to communicate that out. Like, talk about what does that mean? It's only a little piece of information, and that's what I want to say about these scores too. It is a tiny piece of information. It's a very public information, but it's one assessment, right? One moment that day. So it's important to keep that in mind, but it is a piece of information. Okay, so we'll jump in a little bit. Please stop me at any point so that you don't have to, because we're going to go through a lot of slides here and I'll try to go through them as quickly as I can. I will say that overall, in general, our scores look really very positive. This is sort of an opposite trend of our Healthy Kids survey that I just showed on the other one, which is really great. And I will say I am not allowed to disclose anybody else's, but we do actually get access to other people's scores. You will notice that Orinda is scoring exceptionally high when others' scores get released, which is a point of huge celebration. Our teachers work really hard, our students work really hard, and we should be really, really proud of that. So our ELA scores were so high last year. It is very hard to move up or move when you are exceptionally high, but 87% of our students are meeting or exceeding ELA standards in general. So we do like to break that down a little bit and see where it's happening. And that is, those are relatively flat or as flat as they can be scores at high levels. When we break it down by grade level, you can see that those scores have gone up in elementary school grades in every grade level. Now, again, those are different kids, right? So they're not comparable because they're different kiddos. So I'll go down into the cohort in just a second, but there are gains seen across every elementary grade as we see. Middle school is a little bit, it's a little inconsistent all over the place, as I'll say it in my summary, but we do see some declines, and though we did see declines last year in elementary too. So are those the same cohort of kids going up, and what does that look like? But we do see some declines from last year in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade when it comes to percentages of students in ELA meeting or exceeding standards. I mentioned sort of like being careful of which grades we're following, right? So I like to take a cohort of students and see kind of what are they doing as they move along. This is our bigger cohort of kids. I mean, clearly there's a missing, 5th, 6th grade right here. But this is our, as I would call it, class of 23, right? Those are 8th graders last year, now in 9th grade. So taking them when they were 3rd graders all the way through, what does that look like? So there was growth over 3 years and a little dip when they went down into 8th grade from 7th to 8th grade. So that's what you will see in the next few slides is kind of taking whatever cohorts so we can see those same groups of students. How did they do from grade level to grade level? Because that's much more meaningful data than comparing apples and oranges of students, right? I say that OUSD schools mainly show growth from one grade because that's kind of the same wording used on all of the slides. It's sort of in a general trend. This is our kiddos that are currently 8th graders. So they were in 7th grade last year. Again, I mean, we can't really compare what they did in 3rd grade. There was a whole pandemic that happened in the middle, but those kiddos did not drop, right? They remained flat from 6th and 7th grade in ELA scores, as they moved from one grade to the next. And here's all sorts of elementary schools or two grade points, as we can see. 5th and 6th, there's a lot that usually happens between 5th and 6th. It's kind of there's a lot of emotional transition happening there too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens kind of as they adjust. But a significant, growth seeing in between elementary grades as those kids move up, which is always nice to see those growths between 3rd and 4th or 4th and 5th grades. As we always do, we like to, examine our student subgroup data to really zoom in to see what happens in this chart. I'd like to see that, it's statewide called achievement gap, or often now called opportunity gap, the opportunities that we're seeing. We'd like to see that narrow as much as possible, going from left to right. And when we see in ELA data, we are actually seeing some significant narrowing of the gap. The biggest growth happening amongst our Black and African American students when it's broken down by race here and ethnicity. A little dip happening amongst our Hispanic or Latina students, but that is a really big growth happening amongst some and really nice narrowing of the gap. I will say that we don't want to have any gap, in the future, but we'll take positive trends as they move, which is better than not. The gender kind of remains flat across the years, with our female students tend to outperform our male students in ELA standards. And that trend, if you're following high school, kind of continues on. So we'd like to see that even narrow down, but it just keeps going flat across as we see it in middle school. And then we break it down by kind of what I would call by program. So we look at our students with IEPs, which is a little bit of a trend up, a little bit of a gentle trend up. I'd like to see that a little more. And then our English learner, there's missing data. There wasn't enough English learners to be statistically significant data. That's why there's missing points happening there. And that information is always all over the place because English learners are never the same group of students, right? Because you're always pulling kids out, moving them into proficiency. So it's always a different group of students. They're not always identical. They're always moving into reclassified, proficient. So it's a little bit of a harder group to monitor what's going on. But we should be seeing those gaps more narrower than that, especially when we get into math. Any questions on ELA for now? Okay, so I'll jump into math. Some nice growths there that we saw because we saw a dip, and that's a significant dip across the state in math after the pandemic. So it was good to see some recovery there. And moving forward to kind of pre-pandemic data and how many students are performing math standards. We saw significant gains in our elementary schools in math scores. And some gains in seventh, a little dip in sixth, going up in seventh and going up in eighth. So it's a little bit of inconsistency, but a couple of grade levels going up, and that's a good thing. And then broken down again, there's the cohort, right? So we see the cohort, again, there's that pandemic. I mean, that was a big hit when we looked at it, but moving up from seventh to eighth grade. I think this is the only movement downwards when we looked at it from sixth to seventh grade, yes. And then growth between every single other grade cohort group. A little less narrowing in math than ELA, but almost all the groups went up, almost every subgroup. But with that said, growth again by different groups and narrowing of the gap, which we want to see and we want to continue working on and seeing. And then our gender is really interesting. It used to not have a gap, then it fanned out, and now they're all growing, but as we can see, our boys tend to outperform our female students, which is, it's a trend again that follows them. Looking at our bio groups, we see a pretty healthy rise in between our students with IEPs, which is really nice. It's not a trend, but it is a blip up because 2 years I would not consider it. 1 year up is not, but hopefully that will continue, and our English learners as well. So that's a positive
We have
data as
data
well.
here for English learners,
Yeah,
but not for.
so if they're in their first year, they don't have to take the test. Yeah. They don't have to take the English test. They do have to take the math, yes. So this is the alternative assessment. So again, those students with the severely cognitive assessment. So this has to be written in their IEP. It can't, it's not like students with just an IEP. It has to be severely cognitive disability. They take these California alternative assessments. We don't have actually data that we receive about it because they're very specialized. But we just wanted to put it out there so you're aware. So they're assessments are aligned to their specific core content connectors. So they're alternative to Common Core standards. So CAW, which is a horrible acronym, is given to students with those disabilities, and scores are given there to the students. So the students see it and the family see it, but we just don't present the data as a district or school site. Okay. And the last assessment we'll present on is CAST. So that's California Science Test. It's really the newest of the tests, so that's why we don't have as much breakdown of it. So as the years go on, we'll do that. First year of administration was 2019, and then it was canceled, and then we brought it back 2022. So we have 3 years of data with 1 year being pre-pandemic. It is in grade 5 and 8, excuse me, I said 5 and 7 earlier. It is cumulative of all elementary school given to 5th graders and all middle school given to 8th graders. So it's a little harder to distinguish like what exactly are we assessing on. But it is much more like scientific process and a little, not as much on like very specific granular detail as the ELA and math. We did see increases sort of in overall performance amongst the grades. And these are there are achievement gaps when we look at our students and how they're doing. So that's sort of our challenge of where we need to work on. If you're missing a group, it's because they didn't report it to us due to significant statistic significance, right? So it's not because we forgot them. Okay, so what are some general observations? I would say our CAS scores are pretty flat in ELA, and we see increases in math and science. Elementary grades demonstrate consistent growth in ELA and math scores. Some middle school grades show some inconsistent trends back and forth with some declines and some growths. I will say that, our middle school grade, we only have one middle school, so those are the OIS grades, or scores, not grades. Our elementary schools, we did not separate it here at the board meeting by school site, but our school sites have their separated data, kind of all of this data separated school by school. Not all trends are the same at every single school site. So now they will they take that information, they, break it down with their staff, they examine it, and also at their site councils with their parents. So it's not like a secret data, it's just that it's relevant to their specific sites. And then they form their single site plans based on their data and bring it to the, so you will see that presentation in November. So you may see some school sites do much more focus on math and somebody maybe a little more focus on ELA, even though our goals are the same, because of the trends that they're seeing, because they're not the same trends at every single school site. So we do, our deeper analysis of student cohorts reveals meaningful growths in elementary grades and point of further analysis and transition between elementary and middle school. So, it's a big social, and now we need to see kind of curricular, like what is that alignment curricularly between 5th and 6th grade. And there are noted positive growths among student subgroups, but that achievement gap, we want to celebrate the good things, but make sure that we don't lose track of that achievement gap as it continues and it must be addressed. So sort of our next steps as we observe, I mentioned it already, these tests are really, really public. I mean, when this gets released this week, there's going to be news stories and articles and so on, because this is the test that becomes public. We are often don't follow the trends, when they were talking huge losses and all sorts of, reading and math scores, we don't follow the national necessarily trends. So we want to make sure that once we see what the headlines are, because I don't know what statewide data is. I know what neighboring districts that I happen to be nosy in, but I just don't know what statewide data is. We'll be able to push our narrative of what our data is. I do want to emphasize it is one assessment. It is literally a child sitting one day, depending how they're feeling on that day, and taking a test. There are some kids that just can't take tests online. And there they are, right? There are some kids just don't care, and many do. Our kiddos tend to care about tests in general, but it is one piece of summative data, and that's, while they're very important, we do want to kind of put that in mind. What we really want to prioritize is development of our own meaningful local formative assessments. I've heard it described, I think all of us have, is there's importance in this kind of assessment, like as in autopsy is very important in giving you very important information, but we want physicals, which is, something you can do about. And that's what our development of common assessments that our staff can do something about right then and there and intervene with students. So that's the work with professional learning communities, and that's the work with our teacher facilitators, which I have 50% of out of the 2 that are sitting of grade levels that are working these, going through how do we have the essential alignment of curriculum, how do you develop grade level common assessments, and then actually can compare what are the best practices across the district and intervene immediately, as opposed to, oh, look, I got data on a student from last year. Okay, here, you deal with it. It's meaningful, but meaning there's good information, but you can't do much about it. So, so that local work around local assessment that the curriculum team is leading is crucial to give us really good information on what we're doing. So I can't speak more highly of how much our investment into professional learning communities and that curriculum work is, I mean, it's what we do, and that's crucial for our work in our own development. So that's our focus is we're going to segregate data, we examine it, it's really valuable, but it's not end all be all because the work is really everything in between. So.
Thank you.
Happy to answer questions.
Very detailed as always. Appreciate that. Any specific questions or comments from the board on this?
Well, I love that. I mean, there's been growth and that's just, hats off to the teachers and everything and the staff and I'm in here. And that's why we're such a sought after district, right? So appreciate your notes there about, how we're going to continue that upward path. I would love to see more of the ELA advanced offerings at the middle school level to prepare everywhere throughout the district, but especially at the middle school level as kids are leaving and going to high school and college. So they, have a great foundation. And you kind of see it in some of the scores there. And so what can we do strategy-wise, plan-wise, curriculum-wise to strengthen that and enhance it so our kids are ready? And then I did have one question on not that it impacts us at all, but the participation rate. Is there federal funding or state funding behind that?
So we can lose funding if we don't meet it. So we can be penalized in a way. I haven't seen it quite yet.
Yeah.
It's really usually right now in this moment, it's a slap on the wrist. But in the past, kind of pre-COVID, it was, it's a mandate that you must meet it. Or you can actually lose all the colors and lose all the achievement and stuff from the feds. So it's a mandate that you must.
And one last comment.
Sure.
I just love how our teachers are instilling confidence in our students. I know from just with my girls, when they get their CAS tests back, the teacher's like, oh my gosh, have you seen it? They would send an email.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, did you see this?
There's importance to it.
It is so great empowering the students. So appreciate the teachers for that as well.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to comment. Go ahead.
What do you do with the 13% of the 87%, that aren't at meeting or exceeding expectations in ELA or the larger percentage of math? What interventions are we doing and how are we pairing up the students? Now we've got this data, it's mid-October, school started in August. Are we making sure that the students who are underperforming on our tests are the students we've identified for the intervention at this point? And are there additional interventions we can offer? Because really we want to make sure all of our students are meeting or exceeding expectations. And what do we do to get closer to that and see what?
Yeah, and I can have Geeti add to that. Let me just start it. So I just want to point out, so we get school-wide data a little later in a year, but student individual data that we actually can import into our, into the ARIES system is available to us start of summer. So, right. So actually we start off the year knowing that data. So some of the Wednesday meeting time, afternoon time, our teachers have already seen who are the kiddos from last year that didn't meet those standards, so they can immediately start working with them. Or, so that's the intervention piece. Or they've saw kiddos from these are my students last year who didn't do well. Are there any common trends and practices that I need to address this year? Was there a bigger group or kind of as a cohort, so that I can deal with it with these kids? But it's really the vertical articulation, right? Of, hey, these are the students I'm getting that are not. Geeti, I don't know if you want to address we have intervention TOSAs, and this is part of who they work with. So
it is. So we definitely have students who, if the prior year showed gaps, whether it was state assessments or it was even our district-wide assessments, if there are gaps, we start off the year with refresher courses for a refresher period for those students, because typically that summertime, most students do not gain some skills. They lose them because of just not being in school. So we do have those opportunities. And then they are kind of the top of the list priority in terms of getting that additional intervention support for ELA. And so we'll continue. I think that the assessments, those in the moment type of assessments, right? Those common assessments are going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. So what this information doesn't tell us is which of our students are making growth, right? Even if they're, if there's a 1 through 4 level, right? Just as an example, which of our students are making growth from that 1 to 2, and what is that percentage and the number of points, right? And so what are the specific areas we need to target? And then I think specifically for CASP tests, last year we administered 3 interim assessments in ELA and math from 3rd through 8th grade. We plan on doing the same and then having really strategic conversations with our teachers of, you've administered this test, and so now let's really look through our data and see what it's telling us. And then this year, we actually have the opportunity to administer an interim CAST science assessment also. And so we'll be looking to add that as an interim so we can look at that data closely.
I guess on the flip side of the question is we have such a high percentage of students who are meeting the expectations. What are we doing to keep those students engaged and to make sure we're meeting their needs, which, are accelerated?
Well, we do have, you're asking about differentiation, Cara.
She always does.
I would say there's within school, there's within class differentiation, which is a hard thing to achieve. Absolutely. And always the focus. Within middle school, in math specifically, is we do have double accelerated, and regular track. And this year we added tracks or access points after each grade level, so that should there be additional acceleration, you can access it at any point. And they can go to Miramani, right, as 8th grade, 9th grade. And I was just up there last week when they were saying like, hey, this kid is too bored in this math class, put him up, right? And they were, that's end of the quarter. And they were assessing kids and saying like, they can go move forward. How do we support them to be even more, So I think within math itself, but within, in core, I'm looking at my core teacher in front of me here, is there's no like advanced core. So it really stays within the class themselves, but they can, she's going to talk, go for it.
Academy to address that. So we
Go
have
ahead, yeah.
special academies for our gifted and talented writers. So that's one benefit to the academy. So we don't just use it for remediation.
There's enrichment, yeah.
But also for enrichment.
And there's a little more leeway to be able to differentiate, and you can read different levels of books versus in math. It's a little harder to like do it within a class level. So there's different paths, but by our reading level books, you walk into any classroom, they're reading all sorts of different levels of books. So how do you do that? But kind of to your point is sort of, can we add, what are the different strategies? I do say in a vertical, with this network that we're working of our CAPS with Dr. Cruz, we have Miramani in the room with us too. So it's nice that we have now vertical articulation with the high school in the room. Campo's there too, but I'm just talking about Miramani I should mention Camp Olinda as well. There's a portion of our students that go to Camp Olinda. So they are in the room with us. It's really nice that our teachers can actually start, like they have release days with them, which is huge. Because we haven't had that, yeah.
And to add to that, if I may, our work around professional learning communities looks at, what are the strategies, what are the things we can do to support our students who are struggling or need that extra intervention. But there's the piece of what do we do for the enrichment aspect of that also. So it's at both ends. And most of our conversations have kind of lent itself towards that enrichment piece, because our students come to us with so many skills, most of them. And so how do we keep pushing them and encouraging them and motivating them? So that's a piece of that.
Does the I guess the test scores lend itself to some of the summer intervention program too.
Yeah, so I don't know if you use that in a rubric for the summer, but I think we do our local assessments are used as part of the rubric, so usually they align to be, I thought that was part of the rubric, but if they're so, you don't have the new ones yet, so you're using the old ones, so you're more reliant on like the local ones, so they can be part of the summer school. Yeah. Mhm. So.
Do you look at students who might be losing ground and try to assess what might be going on with them?
Sure. We can, yeah.
I would assume it's a small number.
Mhm.
I think, yeah. You had some questions.
That's okay. Well, just reflecting on this and also the last presentation. I mean, sometimes you hear a narrative, which may be very true in other areas, about kind of academic achievement loss due to the pandemic and due to the, schooling at home. And I look at this data and I say, well, if the trends that happened last year had continued, we would still be having that conversation. But what I see now, should it, continue to be maintained or hopefully continue to improve, is like we haven't really had a learning loss, or at least whatever blips or circumstances we saw in the year prior scores have mostly been rectified. When I look at pretty much almost all of these graphs, and there's a few where we've had the really significant issues, which has been talked about before, is in the social emotional learning space and all of that. And I'm really glad we're spending a lot of time on that. But it's also helpful, I think, and tell me if I'm interpreting this incorrectly, but when we're talking to the community, because people will read the news but not necessarily know our exact situation, to be able to reflect back with this information that actually, amazingly for our kids and the families in the district, that we've kind of, we're back to, the numbers are very similar to what they looked like.
I agree. I totally agree. I think there was absolutely a dip in math. We saw that after the pandemic, and that was, and we're bouncing back up. I think, so I agree that that's absolutely the narrative. What's one of the hardest things is when the headlines are one thing and we're in a whole different, that's not our case. So that often happens to us, the scores and budget. So those are the two things that we're always like, that's not our headline. So is that, how do we communicate, kind of go into that communication? So we try to, no matter how many emails we send, but sending the presentations, also our principals, communicating that, our goals. I think the message gets out at some point, and our coordinating council, our parent club presidents are really important with that too, because they're out there, they're the community. So, yeah.
I do think, just kind of following up on that, it is hard to know though what kind of learning loss was experienced that's carried on into the high school at this point.
Absolutely.
Because they don't.
That's true. Those grade levels we're not
So
tracking.
those are the grade levels that it is really hard to see.
Fair enough.
And especially because our middle school numbers are high, but they are lower than our elementary school numbers in terms of percentage of
Which
students
tends to happen, and the high school goes down as well.
But just in terms
Yeah.
of being able to, affirmatively state.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. And I'm not trying to,
We were getting information when it comes to writing that they were seeing some of the strongest, because they do assessment at the start. So we asked them for this year's data. We haven't gotten it yet. Last year's writing assessments were very strong coming in from 8th graders. And they do common assessments in math, so we should be getting that information too. So we weren't hearing from them that we were sending unprepared children from last year. So we haven't gotten this year's data, so we can push forward that as well.
I think that would be good information to share out, because we do hear from our community that there's concerns about preparedness.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest confusions is the homework change. The load of homework. There is a huge difference in how much homework is experienced at the high school and middle school.
It's not just the homework, it's also the
But
management.
it's the management
of
of the activities and so on. And I think that's such a huge difference. And sometimes that's also, is it prepared, is it not prepared? So there's a big social
Right,
unpreparedness.
but if we have data that can support that.
Absolutely,
yes. Any other questions or?
I had a couple things. First, just to piggyback what other people said, I think the positive rebound from last year is really something to celebrate. I was at this meeting last year and I remember jotting down this needs to come back up. It was some pretty significant drops when you showed those graphs, and it rebounded. And I think that's really fantastic. And certainly there was work done to get kids to catch back up. I know you mentioned there typically is a decline from elementary through middle and then through high school in terms of proficiency. But I think that's, you know, what's happening there in that middle school year. I have that child in that year, whatever it was, 4th grade last year, 5th grade this year, and you see that jump back up in math and ELA, and they were in 1st grade, I think, when the pandemic hit, and they seem to be kind of pumped back up. Where you look at the 8th grade data, like, something about that time, particularly in math, we weren't like, just wasn't the same for so many reasons, right? But are we still making sure that that group is catching up on some of those skills that maybe they missed out on during the pandemic? And just in general, right, that our middle school students are going to achieve high, just always, just like everybody else in our district. So I just thought that was worth noting. And then science still remains something that it kind of gets, you know, it's there, but it's lower. And if you look at just pure proficiency, and I remember noting that last year and being like, oh, wow, what about science? And it's a fairly new test. So there's like norming that takes years before you actually can say it's valid. And so maybe we're still in that phase, but there's something about science that should be addressed. And in my head, I was thinking, like, is it a difference around how that content is taught, how science content is taught versus ELA and math, right? From TK on, you're just sort of in it. Science is taught not explicitly until later in elementary school. I have my 5th grader, I think, has another science test coming up, which is newer than when my older kids were going through elementary school, where it was there, but I don't think they were assessed on it all that much. And there's now an effort to make sure we're understanding content, but is it around like knowing information that needs to be worked on? This generation certainly is like, let's Google it. Like, is there something about taking information, knowing it, studying it? This is me surmising, but there's something there that seems to be a difference in how you learn and how you remember and apply. So I think that's important that these scores seem to be significantly lower, and that trend has continued.
Yeah, and I have no answers for that because we haven't seen the test. And so kind of, unless we sit behind a kid and watch, which you're not allowed to do. So now with the comments of the interim, we'll be able to say, like, oh, that's the kind of questions that are being asked, because then you can kind of like, well, no wonder our kids are not prepared, or no wonder they score lower because it's too many facts or it's too much application or this, but we just get nearly no information about it. So you're absolutely, yeah.
Actually, since I was looking at the science scores again, can you bring up slide 28 really quick? I just have a question.
Are you
26? That one, yeah. So I would have thought if we have relatively comparable number of female and male students, so the overall score should be the average of the female and male scores, but it's actually definitely not. Did we?
Yeah.
So did we also have 95% taking this test? Because it looks like for whatever random reason, it must have been more males.
Yeah.
Taking it. Okay. And then if that actually explains, if it was just a small cohort of students, like, taking it for some reason, or like, who knows?
And then my last comment was around just encouraging the alignment across schools, right? We're not looking at school by school data here, but there's real value in understanding that, especially I think at the elementary school where the curriculum content really is very, very similar, and how do you teach this? And, just more continued sharing when you're looking at the data school by school, because I think that is like important, like it is summative. So it's not necessarily that helpful in addressing a particular student's need when they took the test 6 months ago or plus, but it is informative for the 3rd grade teacher who taught the same content last year, who can help in whatever way in helping to make that more robust so that everyone has those same strategies.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you.
Absolutely.
This was on for discussion.
So I will say that this year, the dashboard comes back with academic achievement again, and it's going to be a little different. So we'll probably bring that back. So there'll be some sort of something with scores and achievement again, probably in December.
Okay.
So we'll be back again with it.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Can we take a short 5-minute break?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. So we will now move into our last discussion item of the evening, our food service update.
We're really hitting up all the good topics. Okay, so we committed last spring to bringing an update around how our food service is rolling out at the start of the year. So what we'll cover in this update is, I'm always going to take an opportunity to make sure to reminder of the universal meal requirement. I'll do it in like 10 seconds, and how that's working in Orinda, but really focus on start of the year data, and that we kicked off our steering committee, and then our current successes and challenges or next steps. So as a reminder of the universal meals requirement, in 22-23, California became the first state to implement a statewide universal meals programs for school children. Since then, there are many states that have now repeated that program. I do want to emphasize that so far the budgets California budgets or government use and budgets have demonstrated ongoing commitment to this program, so we do not see it leaving at any time soon. Program builds on the foundation of the federal and lunch and breakfast program, and it is designed to provide free breakfast and lunch for all children every school day. That is the basics of it. And what did that mean to us in Orinda is that prior to last year, Orinda did not participate in federal breakfast and lunch program. And that means that we were not required to follow the requirements established for portion, nutritional, and caloric guidelines. And I keep bringing that back up because that's one of the biggest changes that our parents and students had to deal with, is that there was just such a significant requirement change. Not just in the programming, but that we just didn't have to follow in the past. And then last year also, we were required to participate, required to implement those meal guidelines, and required to implement the universal meals. And we keep getting this question, can we opt out? So I keep putting it in there. We cannot opt out of the universal meals requirement. Okay, so where are we this year? We, I think in spring, approved in May, sometimes approved Sodexo as the vendor to deliver the Orinda food. We do have Mike here from Sodexo, but they were the only respondent to that second request for proposal process for the 23-24 school year. Our contract was restructured at that time to provide us with additional flexibility in types of food vendors, and hopefully quality of food. What that contract does is it has a fixed cost on staff, right, as they staff, but we can do a flex on the food part. That contract does bear higher risk on us because we have to constantly monitor if there is any changes in flexibility of the cost of food. So there's a higher risk there because we want to make sure that we're staying in the positive, right, and not losing money or encroaching on the general fund. I will note here that we are not seeing the difference as of right now of differences in vendors or vendor selection based on the changes in the contract. So I just wanted to point that out. So where are we? I mean, our current, the positive is the start of the year food, has been much more successful than the start of the 22-23. I mean, I will say that last year's start was nothing less than kind of disastrous. So, but meals are served. We have staffing is secured. They're actually counted appropriately and processed. Our menus are being posted like they're supposed to. There's nutritional guidelines are being posted. We have menus for allergies for different foods. Their salad bars are in place. We didn't have almost any of this at the start of the year last year. We have equipment that has been purchased as in place in the kitchens, and all schools have operating kitchens, which if you remember last year, we actually did not have we had some kitchens that were shut down at the end of the year. And we now have kitchens in every single school year, which I'll touch up on a little bit more in our successes. We did want to share some data here, and I'll enlarge it too much. These are the total, and I share a couple of different ways, the data. This is just for the start of the year. So total number of breakfast serves, that light blue is last year and the dark blue is this year. So it's comparing, August to August, September to September. On the left-hand side, you see the breakfast, and then on the right-hand side, you see the lunches. I will point out that last year's August had a whole week less of school because we started it earlier. So that's a significant, actually, a number when it comes to numbers. So this number it's not as comparable. We did not have the Titan software in place last year at the start. That's one of the comments. So it was counted manually, right? And there were spreadsheets all over the place, kind of in that initial disorganization. We have Titan software in place that is actually counting students, by their ID cards. So this year's numbers, I would say, are accurate versus last year's. Those first 3 months actually are as accurate as you manually. We had, shortage of volunteer and staff as much as we possibly can. So I say we look at this information a little more. Is what are we looking percentages of student eating, right? Are percents of students who are going in and getting food increasing? That's the important number. So in 22, 23, 23, 24, in August, we started off really high and then it went down a little bit. September, now it's for breakfast is increasing, excuse me. And in lunch, we see a little bit of a drop off.
Can I ask a question, or would you rather wait till the end?
No, please.
Because it comes up at the end as well, where you talk about the basically the percentage of students getting meals. I guess I'm not 100% convinced that maximizing the number of students getting meals is the right metric to be optimizing for. I mean, absolutely, we want every kid who food to have the food. That is really important, and that's available, and it's great that it's available for everyone. So you can just go get the food. But I guess I just worry a little bit. I'm not.
Is that the metric?
Because I mean, to be honest, that might be completely overwhelming for our schools to have to actually serve, say, 100% of the students.
Oh,
that might not be a good. So if we're out trying to optimize for that, that might not be the right outcome. So I just wonder if there's another. It maybe now's not the time, but to just sort of seed maybe there's a different kind of metric to use. It's more about the quality and the satisfaction than it is about the relative percentage of the students getting.
Right, we're just thinking if it's quality of food. We used to have when the lunch was super popular, we were hovering around 40 to 50% in elementary schools and much higher at OIS. Okay. So when we drop down from about 60% at OIS down to about, I think we're about to see about 20. At least it tells us the kids are not.
Yeah, no, it definitely tells us something. Again, I just
saying, am I striving for 100% of students eating? We can't handle that.
I guess my comment would be more just, hearing from families that would like their kids to eat at school.
Right.
And they're not eating at school because for various reasons, but the numbers are significantly down from where they were before we
at the middle school
program.
Okay, so maybe that would be helpful to have.
Yes.
Talk about these numbers, what's the but when we had sort of a parent or a pay as you go type option, what did those numbers look like? But that's not but then there's issues with that too, because that's not necessarily the population.
Not everybody can afford it.
Right. So,
and we heard a lot of complaints about that my first year here, is it's too expensive. And I don't know that we have accurate numbers. It would literally be what percentage are eating? It'd be principals are I don't know this number. So we actually don't have good numbers from then. We just have abouts, which great.
So again, I don't know that we'll solve it here today, but just looking at some other
Absolutely.
metrics that we do want to track and optimize might be really helpful to make sure we're all
a pulse survey.
Okay. Yeah.
Which we'll talk about that a bit. So here's a number by our school site. Man, the Sleepy Hollow students like to eat, and actually, Patsy Patsy talks about that when we say, "Hey, what's the input?" She's like, "Well, our kids eat," so you can see that in their numbers.
With it being in the new NPR, I think it's also very easy for the students to access because it's right in the center. Everybody walks by in the morning. It's their numbers just figured it out. They're very excited about breakfast.
There, so you're right. It is very accessible.
I think that's.
But they do like that. Yes. So these are the numbers by school sites of this year of percent of students, which is, again, discussing what is our optimal metric. I don't know. I mean, the more students eat, the our higher chances of actually are being in a positive. That's an important breaking point. Now, and here's lunches. So they are going up from August to September, which is an important metric because we don't want them to go down. This OIS continues to be the issue because these actually numbers around the other school sites are about to what we were hearing in the past. 40 to 50% is what we were getting when we were here prior to the implementation. OIS is significantly lower than what it was. Okay, so kind of going around, now what? We did have one steering committee meeting with the food service, but I just wanted to mention that. We do have a committee consisting of parents, staff, Hillary's joining us as well. And we have the rest of the meeting scheduled for the rest of the year. We did focus on sort of establishing the understanding because the people, members are new. Some of them were really heavily involved in it, but others are brand new. There are several people in there that have really significant expertise in monitoring food service, either like really at schools or from private businesses. So we talked about understanding what a steering committee does, but really requirements of universal meals and our current food service data. I went through that a little bit. And then they established and jumped into some immediate actions, items prior to kind of developing some of their bigger goals. And one of those metrics, sort of to that comment, is surveying all students for satisfaction. We do have a sample survey that was issued. We really wanted to do it through a Survey Monkey as opposed to kind of doing a paper counting survey. We have somebody with an experience and they shared a survey that was done. It's a very quick sort of 2-question, but they would do it on an iPad. They were thinking of using parent volunteers so they can help because their experience is that kids really like just touching things and, adding survey data and playing around and providing input, but having a parent volunteer that they would what are your questions as they're eating and doing that like really TK through 8 and getting some really quick, immediate information about their satisfaction with the food so that we can have that data. Now, does that kind of become a metric of like, how do we increase that satisfaction? That could be more, a metric that we want to see. What are we looking at? We haven't gotten information from students outside of, I think Sodexo has done a survey, but we haven't gotten except for kind of hearing from the kids in general surveys. So this will be good information for us. So we're working on that right now. They suggested for us to have a monthly meetings with Sodexo staff to really make sure, hey, this is what we're seeing on a monthly basis to keep that accountability with Sodexo right now. And then also talked about having interviews or however we call it with current staff in our kitchens. There's a general conversation about, and I'm not just saying it because Mike's here, that Mike's supportive of our staff on campuses, but that there is a general disconnect between our staff members in our kitchens and upper management of Sodexo, of what we're hearing sort of like, hey, here's the bigger goals of the company of Sodexo and kind of what's happening on the ground. Or here's what trainings are happening, or here's what's going on, and then actually what's happening implementation wise. So I think we really want an immediate bridge of that. Hey, there's a lofty goals of kind of what's coming out of Orange County versus what's happening on the ground. Our parents that were on the steering committee were very complimentary of our staff in the kitchens, how much they care about our kids, how much they love working in our schools. So they were really, really complimentary of them and really wanted us to reach out and say, go talk to them and see from them how you can improve and what can be done. So we did post a position. This was also brought up by the steering committee. They didn't even actually realize that. They said, can we get our own designated food service person? We posted a position, was that summer? It feels so long ago. And actually offered to a person who then due to health problems, couldn't take it. But so should we repost that again? Because we never went back out and reposted it. So that was a suggestion by a steering committee to have somebody dedicated on our staff to work with Sodexo and our kitchens as a liaison to really, constantly stay on top of it. So we are considering that. We're looking at, or we only have budget numbers from August. And that's an incomplete month. It's also a starter month. As soon as we have September numbers, we can really understand where we stand with our budget and go through and see what kind of a position can we post. Because again, we want to make sure that we stay solvent.
Is that something that we could share with a neighboring district?
They are not interested anymore.
Okay.
Yes. They have full-time positions and they're happy.
Good.
So good for them. We're happy for them. And they were very interested in scheduling field trips to other programs in the neighboring districts, other programs that are run by Sodexo and other vendors, and programs that are running their own food service. So sort of an exploratory mission. So Angel doesn't know it yet, but she's finding out right now that we're going to be scheduling all sort of field trips for our committee, which is going to be very exciting. Which we did that in Basque, and that was really actually very eye-opening and provided a lot of good input for our Basque committee. So we would do the same. So that was sort of an immediate action items, which was very exciting. I'll say our successes and challenges. Successes, I mean, we have a really large percentage of our kids partaking in the lunch program. That's a lot of students eating at school, but a lot higher than in many other programs, because that's our culture, right? We have percentages of students eating breakfast has increased since the start of the year. There's actually a lot of positive feedback as well. I know the negative feedback gets a lot more attention, but there's actually a lot of positive feedback coming in from school sites about the food program. There's a lot of positive feedback also coming in, as I mentioned again. There's partnership between parent volunteers, especially at the elementary sites, and the kitchen staff. So we really have to put that out there. The menu has improved. The salad bars are really full of healthy options. The salad bars are always a great hit with the parents, not always with the kids. Many students love them too, especially the fruit. But they offer actually a lot of healthy options. So and the kids can keep going to them as many times as they can. Our staff at the sites is very caring, and they really take great pride in their work, which is wonderful. Steering committees has tremendous expertise, which was just really great, and a lot of immediate action step. I really singled out Sleepy Hollow Kitchen here. There was somebody, I know, Mike, you love the facility, but the person on the steering committee who has overseen, I guess, San Francisco Unified, Boston Unified Schools, food services program, says he's never seen a kitchen like that. So he was just loved it, in love with it. So there's such potential there for us to do great things or centralize some things and do great menus, which is great. And clearly our kids love it. So those are some successes. Some challenges, middle school percentages of students remain significantly lower than elementary, and it's significantly lower than what we've seen before. We do still hear, as much as we hear some positive, we do hear concerns. Clearly not as much as in the past, but we do continue to hear concerns from parents about quality of food, portion sizes, and menu choices.
We're still hearing about food waste in the same.
We have absolutely hear food waste. Not as much as maybe last year, but we definitely hear about it. Yeah. We did, just on a side note, at I think you were there for that portion at the city council mayor's meeting. There was Judith is part of recycling, food waste recycling. Yes. She talked about reaching out to us and sort of partnering a little bit about how can we do better and what can we do with the food waste. And then one of the members on the steering committee, that's their expertise as well.
I had a Boy Scout reach out to me as well that would like to.
Great. Yes. Love to. Any of that will be good. I think the staffing shortage continues, and it's became more of an issue in the last month, I would say, last couple of weeks. So what that does is when you have staffing shortage, you have people that are not cooks cooking, like Sodexo management. It also affects menu and safety issues. So if you are continuously, we have some kind of key players that are veteran, but if you're constantly bringing in new staff, they can only prepare certain food items.
I was going to ask about that because I know last year we had a big discussion around safety and cutting of knives and trainings. And
I think that's improved. Yes, we have not heard that.
Okay.
Those kind of level of
Yeah, that
safety,
was-
we have not heard that.
Good.
But there is, if you're constantly bringing on new people, there are issues. And then we had some issues, or some ordering issues around that caused shortages of food for multiple days. At a couple sites. And so there was a lot of running around but that has been corrected. We don't have control over training and ordering of the menus and food. So that continues to be a concern. As I mentioned, our budget implications are unknown. It'll become more clear after we get invoices from September, and Mika is going to work on that. Next steps, that student survey to get feedback direct from the students, budget effects of the new contract. We revised that contract and took on more risk. It costs more with one purpose. So we want to see the effect. We haven't yet. So that's step number one, or one of the steps that's immediate. Explore the reposting of the position. We'll know that as soon as the budget comes in. The field trips, as I mentioned, to the other districts and programs, and then continue evaluating the program. We had committed last spring to saying we're going to come back to the board, say how the year started, and not wait till like February, right? And then we would swing right back immediately and say, hey, how are we doing again? So that should there be some long-term changes, that we could do it in time. So that we're, not stuck till spring and saying like, well, our hands are tied. So we're committing with that again. Like we have some short-term immediate things. Okay, there's some minor tweaks that we can immediately do to positive changes. And then let's reevaluate immediately again. So we could see this coming back to the board again. We don't have it scheduled right now, but it's 2-3 months. Unless the board has different, that will be our recommendation.
Great, thank you for this. Are there any other questions in addition to what we've kind of been asking throughout this presentation tonight? Mara? No, shaky. Any specific questions for our Sodexo contact? He is here. No? Okay.
Great.
I have one. Well, first of all, it's really great to hear that the employees who are working in the kitchens like being there and are happy. That must be just great for the kids too, to see friendly faces every day, and that just adds to the school community. So that last year, this time and through the spring, there was staffing shortages and just it sounds like they're still existing, but
Yes.
some stability. So I think that's a really great thing. The steering committee sounds really great and like a lot of good resources. Since you're here tonight, my question is, why hasn't there been a change in vendors to increase food quality? Would that be directed here or elsewhere? That was the point of having the contract, right? Was to potentially vary vendors, or maybe that's more difficult than we first.
That was just the question I just asked and found out last week too. So I think we have follow-up meetings to find out.
I have an answer.
Okay, great.
And I guess should I come up here? since
Yes,
I'm-
that would be great. Please, if you could come up there.
Yeah.
Hello.
Up my nose. Up my nose. Excellent question. Your question about, is there new vendors?
Yes.
Why not?
Why haven't we been using different vendors?
I can't necessarily answer directly why haven't we, well, I won't, but I can tell you that in a conversation with my boss, that I have specifically said we are having difficulty with our current vendors and I need to branch out to get other vendors. And he specifically said, go ahead, do whatever you have to do. So I am allowed to now investigate other vendors, bring them according to, send it up the chain of command, pricing and all of that, so that we're not spending overtly amount out of your budget. But the gates have been open that I can look at new vendors. And we will be exploring that. As for ordering and the issues with OIS specifically, I have hired a new supervisor for there. I tried to promote from within. The person was very knowledgeable when it came to ordering, but maybe not so much when it came to actually managing other people. So I've hired somebody from, she's coming out of Loaves and Fishes. She's excellent. She was also a teacher, so she taught culinary arts. So she's already started. I'm bringing her on slowly because I want her to learn all of the rules and regulations, what constitutes a reimbursable meal and all of that. So she's learning that this week to get that specific. And then she will be moved to OIS to elevate the food quality, as well as being a face for the community. So that is currently happening.
And Mike, she starts next week at OIS?
She started today, as a matter of, she started today.
At OIS next.
At OIS. I could possibly start her on Friday, maybe Monday, just depends on how quickly she comes up to speed with, like I said, the meal requirements and also ordering and organization. So there's a lot of things to learn behind the scenes before I just toss her right into but she's excellent. And we've already talked about, I talked to Patsy over at Sleepy about doing a food tasting over there. So as she comes on board, debut that. So, and a lot of this is coming out of the patients of AIDA who did bring it up and forced me to say, hey, it's either this or the highway. And we are searching. So I want you all to know, and AIDA too has been incredibly supportive in this whole thing. So thank you for being patient, but we will show you results, I promise. I'm not here for lip service. I'm here to show you that we can do it.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I may, we are receiving food, it's called the US commodity, which we were not receiving last year, but we applied and we started receiving, how do I say, the ingredients?
From Sacramento.
Yes, we are receiving those like chicken or strawberry or all those vegetables, different things.
Seasonal
from the
vegetables,
government.
and we're building menus around what we are ordering ahead. So we have a new order coming up, but I'll try to build. I just finished November's menu, and then we'll try to put December's menu around what we're getting in commodities. If for no other reason, we just don't have the space to store it either.
The only thing we pay is a delivery fee. And we have to record the revenue and expenditure on the book, but the actual payment is a delivery fee.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. There's no public comment on this?
No public comment, unless something just came in. No.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for that. Moving into our measures E&I implementation.
So very quick, I feel like every other meeting we bring in CBOC term charts. We keep trying to fill this committee. So we actually had multiple applicants and could fill it. The problem is that the CBOC committees, there's a law that actually mandates, so they have to fit within a very specific representation. So we are adding Michael Yao and recommending him as a representative, as a parent of a child enrolled in a district and an active member of a parent club. And he is an active member of a parent club, not on a board, but parent club. And that checked it. While we had other people that had volunteered, none of them were active in a business organization, local business. We're in other places, but not in Orinda. So what we're going to do is recommending this term chart to be approved. And then the CBOC is going to start their business. Based on our legal advice, we're just going to leave this vacancy on our website as advertised, and once in a while just advertise it in a newspaper, and hopefully somebody will come in. But we'll continue working with the 6 should this be approved, and the quorum still is 5, right? Yes, 1, 2, 3.
And out of curiosity, have we specifically reached out to the Chamber of Commerce to see if anybody?
We've been reaching out to all
their-
sorts, but I can also call them and see, hey, do you know somebody?
Or just something they can add to their membership?
Yes.
It has to be a local Orinda business.
Our business.
Because it sounds like you'd have to be like, I'm not sure what
Yeah.
besides the chamber would
I
even
know, I
qualify.
see
Even the Orinda Rotary isn't really a business.
Probably the Rotary.
Well, they're not really a business
No.
organization. I don't know what.
Some sort of a business, yeah.
In Orinda.
Right. Oh, business organization, like a taxpayer association is one of ours, or, oh no, that's Brad, that's taxpayer association. So it's organization representing business located in the district.
Just basically the chamber is the only thing I
Right.
can think of, but they might, yeah.
So actually, that's a good idea.
Any other questions or comments on this?
Thank you to the community members.
Yeah.
who stepped
Yes.
up.
I did thank all of you.
Yes.
Do you want to be part of parcel tax? No. We do, that one's filled. So
Any public comment?
there's no public comment.
All right, this is on for action.
This is Eve. I move that we approve the recommended members for the CBOC.
This is Ed, I second.
Trustee Shogun? Aye. President Weiner?
Aye.
Vice President Hoxie?
Aye.
Trustee Phillips?
Aye.
Trustee Collins Coleman?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. And our next measure, E&I implementation, solar interconnection of new PG&E meters.
As part of the HVAC mechanical and electrical upgrade projects across the district, new main switch gears, PG&E meters, and PG&E transformers were replaced. Due to this change, PG&E may require the district to forfeit its current participation in the net energy metering program. Because this offers a much higher savings benefit than the net billing tariff, the district is recommending entering into an agreement with Terra Verde Energy, who currently oversees the district's current solar systems, to negotiate a new agreement with PG&E on the district's behalf. The proposal is for a time and material basis not to exceed $10,000.
Great, thank you. Seems fairly straightforward. Are there any specific questions or comments on this?
Would there be any benefit from, not that I'm trying to add more work, but to seeing if there is any type of, I don't know, what the word, a percentage off or what have you for the federal government for the Inflation Reduction Act with solars in terms of inputting solar or just expanding the solar program that we have here? Either that or under pandemic programming or grants. I'm just wondering if that's something that's possible. I know they were doing it before, but I don't know if it's still.
We can absolutely explore that. I think it's separate, but yes. Yes,
Yeah.
and.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything further from the board? No public comment, I assume?
No.
Okay, this is also on for action.
This is Katie. I make a motion that we approve the Terra Verde Energy Agreement for the services required for a new interconnection agreement between the district and PG&E.
This is Eve, I second.
Trustee Collins Coleman?
Aye.
Vice President Hoxie?
Aye.
President Weiner?
Aye.
Trustee Shogun?
Aye.
Trustee Phillips?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, great, thank you. Moving into our board policies, items listed under the board policies section are typically updates and new policies or administrative regulations that have been recommended by the California School Boards Association. These policies are generally acted on by the Board of Trustees in one motion. There is no discussion of specific policies before the board vote unless a member of the board, staff, or public requests specific items be discussed and or removed from the board policies section. It is understood that the administration recommends approval of all board policies as presented. Each item in the board policies section approved by the board shall be deemed to have been considered in full and adopted as recommended. Are there any policies that any board member would like to pull? Okay, seeing none, these policies are on for action.
This is Eve. I move that we approve the board policies as listed in items B through K.
This is Katie. I second.
Trustee Collins Coleman?
Aye.
Vice President Hoxie?
Aye.
President Weiner?
Aye.
Trustee Shogun?
Aye.
Trustee Phillips?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, moving into our communications and announcements. Mr. Shannon?
Good evening. My name is Charles Shannon, president of Orinda Educators Association, and I think I'm towards the end here, so get going. October has been full of learning opportunities. I want to start out by saying on Monday, October 9th, so many of our educators and district staff offered quality professional development, and we know these opportunities are inspiring, provide leadership experience, and are cost-effective for the district. We also know this attracts and retains quality educators. I'd like to thank Guy Tiesma and all of our presenters for planning and providing this quality learning opportunity. It's Hispanic Heritage Month, which is very exciting. It's time to learn more about the vibrant and historical tributes of Hispanic heritage and culture by recognizing the achievements and contributions of Hispanic Americans, champions who have inspired others to achieve success. It's Filipino American Heritage Month. I haven't been hearing that. So to make sure we hear it tonight, it's a time to honor the history, pursuits, accomplishments, and legacy of Filipino Americans here in the United States. I taught in Vallejo for 8 years, and there's a large Filipino population there, and it was an amazing experience for me. I, as a child, lived in the Philippines. My father was in the Navy, and he was stationed there. And I have fond memories of my time there, and I just appreciate the connections that I've been able to make here. Wonderful culture. It's also International School Library Month, and this is important because our libraries are so important. It's an opportunity to draw attention to the importance of our school libraries and education of our children. Research continues to show that students achieve more in their schoolwork when they have access to a school library. And that has a great collection of strong educational programs as well. Our students become better readers when they have access to a school library, when they have access to great literature, and they have a credentialed librarian. So I want to do a shout out to OAS, who has a credentialed librarian. We see in the research that that's such an incredibly positive thing that creates programs that really do help our children. I want to say at the elementary levels, we have Ann Lowell over at Glorietta. She's amazing. So we have amazing people working in our other libraries as well. So I didn't want to not do a shout out to them. Finally, let's celebrate all of our parents and guardians who met with their child's teacher for a conference to discuss academic progress, social development, and overall performance in school, for also describing goals that we have for the kids. That's super important. These conferences help strengthen our relationships with individual families and support student learning by providing more comprehensive information about our children's progress, allowing time for deep conversation. So I especially want to thank our teachers for planning all these conferences and for their professionalism for meeting with our parents and guardians. It's always a great opportunity. I think it's one of the things that I love the most about my year is being able to share, having those conversations with parents. They say, oh yeah, my child is like that, or oh, that's interesting. You know, it's just, they get so many takeaways, and it really does build that relationship with our parents. And I told my parents, I said, this is a formal one, but as you know, all of us here in Orinda love to meet with you throughout the year, talk to you over the phone. We can have we're all familiar with Zoom. We can have a quick Zoom. So there's so many opportunities throughout the year to connect with our parents, but that's the more formal, official time that we meet with parents. But and this is often with parents, and it's great. So I want to thank everybody. Such an incredible night hearing all this information and just what we're doing to strengthen the social development of our children, to help them be kind citizens. We know academically our kids are doing well. They'll continue to do well. But it's who you are as a person and the kindness that you show to others, the respect that you have for all people. That's really important. And we want to really, really focus on that. And I see that we're doing that. So I just appreciate all the conversation and the work that we're going to do ahead of us to make sure that our kids know that that's really what we want the most from them, is to really be kind to themselves and to others and go out in the world and spread that kindness. It's so important that we do that as we see what's going on throughout this world. And we can do that here. So thank you.
Thank you. I don't see our CSCA.
We don't have CSCA.
Okay.
And for cabinet, we just have Carrie with an announcement. On behalf of cabinet. I'm just kidding.
We're all glad to be here and just really excited to announce that today was the first day of our Diversibility Awareness Week, DA. It's our 7th year, and each year we keep expanding to bring in new things. And I just wanted to highlight first the banner on the freeway. It's one of my favorite things. We now have posters that we've got all over schools, but that we're trying to have also at local businesses. So if anybody wants some flyers before they go to take to local businesses, I've got them in my car. Additionally, we added an access tools showcase this year where students have the ability to actually touch and learn how to use different access tools that individuals with disabilities might use to access their education or mobility. And we had a couple of students that Patsy made a video with explaining each item that is being showcased. And so we still have our hero showcase. Each year we're just adding and expanding. Just want to reiterate, this is a kickoff week. It's an awareness week. We will continue activities throughout the school year.
Great, thank you so much. And when did all the schools start doing it at the same time?
Last year.
It was last year, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, board reports. Cara, do we want to start with you?
Sure, I'm happy to start. So, we had a great tour at Sleepy Hollow of the new NPR. It was my first real opportunity to see the new NPR in the kitchen and the music stage. It was great. And it's just going to get better as we did things like the new seating areas out in the plaza. We also had the opportunity to look at the rest of the campus and start talking about planning for what we're going to do next. And that was really great. Had a good site visit at Wagner Ranch, and then was able to attend the Wagner Ranch Parents Club meeting. It was great to connect with the Parents Club and hear what's going on in campus. We had a board coffee that was a while back, but it was great to have parents in person at Chicago's to hear what they were thinking about, concerned about. We had the Del Rey site visit that I was only able to attend the first part by Zoom, but I loved hearing from Principal Lai about what was going on her campus, and it's always exciting to hear what's going on the campuses. And then finally, we had a school bus meeting, and school bus transportation authority is always trying to figure out how to provide more service to students and what we can do to, in Orinda, we're pretty lucky with the amount of service we have. And other communities, particularly Lafayette, that like more service, but it's a challenge. So I think this year's school buses are getting off to a great start. They're very heavily used. We have, a lot of students riding the bus, and I think that it's a great partnership between the districts and the cities, and the county Measure J dollars really support our ability to run those buses. Our program is very unique. I did a little research to find out, if there are other programs in other parts of our state that operate similarly to ours, and they're really hot. And so we're just really lucky to have this bus transportation we do. So those were the things I was going to talk about.
Great, thank you. Katie?
This feels like a really busy month from a board member perspective, which is kind of exciting. Glorietta is my school this year, so I got to be on campus a couple weeks ago now to visit, and that was really great. I like how each of our campuses has something, has a different take, and I like that. It was a nice visit. Del Rey visit similarly was really informative and helpful. It was my first full board visit. Oh no, we had one last spring, but just nice to be all together to hear about what's going on there and be on the same page. I think that I've attended one meeting last week as well as the Wellness Steering Committee. And I think my main takeaway from that is just how amazing this community is with volunteers with tremendous expertise to share. Just really just supporting the schools in ways that are unseen, maybe on day-to-day basis, but just really fabulous people to work with. I'm really excited that Wellness Steering Committee is up and running in particular, and one continues to be evolving rapidly and in such a wonderful way. I was there at the inception, and it's just moving and developing really well. I will be at the board coffee on Thursday at Glorietta. Thursday, but also at Glorietta on Wednesday. And then I'm at the coordinating council next week and our first safety steering committee meeting next week. That's it.
Excellent. Yeah, similarly, I'm looking at my calendar, like, yeah, that was a relatively busy month. Things that were not mentioned by others, so I'll just gloss over those. One is attended the Del Rey Parents Club meeting almost a full month ago at this point. So similarly, great to hear what's going on campus there as my assigned school. And to be there for something other than TK soccer, get to see a little bit more. And then we had the mayor's liaison meeting a week ago, I guess, not even a week ago, last week. It's all blending together. But one thing that was notable there was, we had talked a little bit about some of our mental health, social emotional learning initiatives, both between Aida and myself. And the principal of Miramani shared some of what they're doing there, probably much more than he intended to. And I think it was in a way that it was, I think, became much more of a discussion at the meeting and at the community level, which was nice. So everybody there, it's really great representatives from across Orinda, different civic groups, but led by the mayor, got to hear kind of some of these issues and things that we're working on. Because I think, as we've talked about here before, it really is kind of a community-wide discussion. So kind of notably out of that, and then looking forward to the 2x2 with the city later this week.
Well, I'll say that I enjoyed the coordinating council meeting the other week, the site visit, Sleepy Hollow and Del Rey. Have upcoming board coffee this week with Katie, and the campus safety event in Miramonte was amazing.
Oh yeah,
I really enjoyed that. I was impressed by the parent engagement and the critical questions. And a huge thanks to Stacey Cranks, for moderating that discussion and really coordinating. But that was well done. So excellent.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I've attended has been covered already, but I'll just add that we had a Orinda board president's meeting last Thursday. It was only Moraga, myself, and then Nancy for the high school district. But it's just always, just a great forum to just meet and talk about kind of what's going on in our districts. And actually, John Nickerson was there for a few minutes as well, so got to chat with him a little bit about what's going on. And then I think that's, with 2x2 this week, and I get to go visit my college kids, so that's what I'm most excited about right now. But okay, let's see. So moving into our consent calendar. Items listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and are acted on by the Board of Trustees in one motion. There's no discussion of these items before the board vote unless a member of the board, staff, or public requests specific items be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar. It is understood that the administration recommends approval on all consent items. Each item on the consent calendar approved by the board shall be deemed to have been considered in full and adopted as recommended. I don't believe that
There's no public comment.
Okay, or that anything is being pulled. So is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
This is Eve. I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Trustee Shogun?
Aye.
Trustee Phillips?
Aye.
Vice President Hoxie?
Aye.
President Weiner?
Aye.
Trustee Collins-Coleman?
Aye.
Hey, everybody.
Yes.
We're like in weird order. Motion carries.
Great. Our future agenda items.
Yeah, so next month, our big item is update on BASC implementation. From curriculum is how the literacy program update is really focusing on phonics. We'll give an update on our bringing back the nature area and the school site plans. And then in December is our annual reorganization meeting and first interim financial math and attendance and so on. Some new reports there.
Great, thank you. I should have shared also that Aida and I participated in a meeting regarding the nature area. With Rebecca Bauer-Cahan and Inga Mayor Miller and city manager as well.
Yeah, so the plan there is to bring back kind of the budget, the updated budget and the new requirements, updates, and that's why we agendize it in November.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. That's it.
And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
This is Katie. I motion that we adjourn.
This is Eve. I second it.
Trustee Collins-Coleman?
Aye.
Vice President Hoxie?
Aye.
President Weiner?
Aye. Trustee Shogun?
Aye.
Trustee Phillips?
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.